Welcome back to the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. Today, my guest is Rolf Haltza. He's the author of the book Jobstacking and an expert in the art of maintaining multiple remote jobs at the same time. Yes, you heard that right, having two or more jobs, full-time jobs at the exact same time. Fascinating topic. Rolf, how are you, man?
Hey, thank you. Thank you for bringing me here. Happy to be here with you and to talk about job stacking and how to have multiple remote jobs.
Absolutely. I guess to kick things off, how did you get inspired to write the book Job Stacking?
So I got inspired to write the book because first of all, I decided to I started doing it. I started having multiple jobs. I even started back in 2018 before the pandemic, before remote work was mainstream. Because I was working at a job that gave me a couple of work from home days. There was like 2 or 3 per week, and I figured like, hey, maybe I can squeeze another job and with those days, during those days. And so I tried that. I didn't really know what I was doing, so it didn't last long. But the kind of it was kind of the seed, right? So when the pandemic hit and we went all full remote, I was like, well, how could they know if I got another job? I figured there's no way anybody can know right now that we're not in the office, that I don't have, because what happened in 2018 was that I had to have I had to leave my computer at home running online all day. Like I had to like call and if it ever went on to sleep, I would have to call like, hey, move the mouse or something. It was very rudimentary, very amateurish, right? And but now, 2 years later, we're in the middle of the pandemic. I go like, hey, if I just get another job, if I go through the whole interview process, accept their offer letter, and just don't quit my first job, how would they ever know? Like how would they ever know? How would job number two, would know that I didn't quit, and how would J
J2,
one?
I like that
Yeah,
term.
yeah,
Okay.
J1,
The
job one,
J1 and J2, that's
yeah,
funny.
yeah, job one, job two, J1, J2. So I was like, how would they know? And so I just started doing it, and I just kept doing it. And I would, I don't know, I would think about what I was learning. I would think about what I was seeing, and I would discuss it with a group of close friends that I had. That were very, let's say, very aware of the nature of modern employment. Like we were all very aware of how we were very cynical. Let's put it like that. We were all very aware of how bullshit it was. Can I swear in this podcast? I guess I can.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, bullshit was, the little psychological tricks. We were all very aware of that. So I would just bring it up with them, like, hey, I'm noticing this. I'm noticing that when I'm in, because the other thing, and I'm jumping all over the place, right? Because I'm trying to condense the last 4 or 5 years into a few minutes. Because what I would realize is that I when you have multiple jobs at the same time, you get exposed to so many different types of companies, so many different ways of doing things, so many even lines of work, like industries, right? You start kind of like it's like a time, you kind of condense time, so you're getting more experience, you're getting more exposed to things that would take longer. So I would start realizing like, hey, and I would tell my friends like, hey, I'm realizing that whenever I go to like a prestigious company that has like has a very good reputation and has like very top tier talent, I'm usually not, I don't, I'm not good there. Like I'm usually don't have a good time, and I usually get fired pretty quickly. And I notice also that that also happened with very crappy companies. So it was like it was interesting to me to notice the two extremes of like very good, very reputable, very top tier companies, right? I would have kind of like the same experience as in bad companies, like exploitative, like you're more cliche bad employers. And
Hmm.
and then I would think about, I would tell them like, hey, I'm noticing that if the company is just a mediocre one, it's just like an unknown, but they're trying their best, they're aspirational, and the work is not that hard. I thrive there. I never get fired. I always get pats in the back, and so it's like there's something to this. Like maybe I should start accumulating those type of jobs instead of like hopping, like being 1 month in this company and then another month in another one. And but I did have that period of about a year where that's what was happening, and that's where I was like taking notes, thinking about what I was seeing. And then I mean, it was literally a bunch of Telegram notes that I had at first. I was like, hey, I can maybe expand this into a book. And now the book is not the book is not very long, but it's an actual book, and it was born out of those little notes that I was taking as I was basically writing down my experiences and my observations, my insights of everything that I was experiencing
Hmm.
about employers, and how I was, how much I could get away with, that kind of stuff. So I was just writing everything down, and eventually it turned into a book.
Yeah, that's awesome. And another sort of definition I would like you to give us is, what is the definition of job stacking?
Okay, so job stacking is basically, if you think about the 8 hour workday, right? That you have, if you think about it as a box, as an empty box, right? That represents 8 hours. You put tasks in there, like so like you finish a task for your job, for your employer, and you put like a Lego in it, right? Like a little piece there. And in theory, that box should have enough tasks that it's full every day. But what happens is that that's not true at all. Like many times we only have to work for 2 hours each day, right? And that was uh, became perfectly apparent with the advent of remote work, because when you were back in the office, even if you were not being productive, you were technically working because you were in the office. So it's like if you had downtime, you were still in the office. It's not like you could take that time for yourself, right? Like nowhere did it happen. It was very rare. Like maybe they let you do it one day out of the year, where you go, where you would say like, I'm done, so I'm leaving, right? Like I'm going home. Like I finished my task for the day. I'm leaving. No, right? Like usually what happens is like you're done, and then you have to stay, either doing nothing or you were assigned some busy work, that kind of
Right.
stuff.
Butt in
So
seat.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
They would say like butt in the seat.
Yeah, butt in the seat. Exactly. And so, but once we went remote, fully remote, that went away. So it's like, okay, so now I only actually need a couple hours to satisfy my boss. What do I do with the rest of it? So that's what job stacking is that you take basically your time box, right? And you fill it with tasks, but from different jobs, right? So it's like you end up working 8 hours, right, or less actually, like in reality. Like even with 3 jobs right now, I don't work 8 hours. Even with 7 jobs. See, my peak, my peak was 7 jobs. Even with 7 jobs, I wasn't working 8 hours a day. So but the idea is that
So you're at your peak, you were working
seven.
7 jobs at
That's right.
once.
That's right.
You,
That's right.
okay, I have a question for you. Was it you that wrote that famous YC what's it called? Hacker News post
No, no,
about
that wasn't me. No, no,
that
that
wasn't
wasn't me.
you?
That was
Because
that
what
wasn't
did
me. That
that
wasn't me.
guy peak out at? He was at like 7 or 10 jobs.
I think that post, he said he was at 11, but you have to take it with a grain of salt what he means, right? Like like maybe he got 11 the last month, but then next month he only has, because again, like there's an ebb and flow of it. So I could say, right, like I could tell you like my peak was 7 jobs, right? But right now I have 3, and in average, I would say in the past 2 years, the average would be something like 3 jobs. But I've had 5, I've had 4, I've had 7, I've had 6. So I don't know, like if I see a post like that, like somebody has 11 jobs, it's like, even if you see me, right, like if you know nothing and you see me saying I have 7 jobs, you have to take into account it's like, for how long did I have 7 jobs? And it was,
Right, right.
it was,
I think
yeah,
I read on one of your pages that you peaked at 7, but you sort of hover around 3 on average.
that's right, that's right, 3, 4. And right now I'm trying to maximize free time, so it's like the 3 jobs that I have are very comfortable. I barely do any work, so it's like I don't want to mess the equilibrium I have. I don't want to mess what I call the job stack. The job stack is basically the jobs that you have. The job rotation. Another way of thinking about it is the job rotation,
Mm.
because
J1, J2, and J3.
J1, J2, and J3. That's right.
I love it. So we have so many questions from sort of recruiting to working the job to sort of different aspects of this, and I'll try to go somewhat sequentially from getting to the job, from the listings to getting the job to being in the job, and sort
Okay.
of follow it somewhat sequentially, but there will be some backing around, bouncing around.
All right.
So my first question is actually about background checks because I think a lot of people would hesitate to even go this direction because they're sort of afraid that when J2 runs a background check, they'll see that you're currently employed at J1 on the background check.
Yeah.
If you're a normal W2 employee, and then
Right.
you know what I mean? And then that could be an issue. So
Yeah.
what happens in that situation?
Right. So the issue with background checks is that they really start to become a problem when you want to have more than two jobs, because when our background checks run, they're usually run when you're about to start, or like when you're new, basically. Like they only run it once. It's not like companies are constantly running background checks, right? That may change in the future, right? Like if job stacking becomes super mainstream and employers really don't like it, we could come to a point where employers are running monthly background checks to keep you in line, right? But for now, that's not happening, and the background check is run at a very specific point, which is when you are either in the interview process, you're about to get the offer, or you already got the offer, and before you sign, or a little bit after you begin. So
Hmm.
in that window, it is normal for you to still be employed. Okay, for you to like it's a normal window where the jobs kind of overlap, because people are not expected to quit their jobs and to leave as soon as they hear positive feedback from the interview on the second employee. Like you need something very concrete. So it's
No,
very
I get that because if you were getting recruited basically by
yeah,
J2, they know you're working for J1.
exactly,
But
exactly,
there's a lot of sub situations here. Like let's say you had already quit the job on your resume, and then you got a J2, and that's not even on your resume yet, and then you got a J3, right?
exactly,
Does that make
exactly,
sense? So
exactly, exactly.
that's so what would happen there? Can J3 will be looking at sort of your transcript and see, okay, he was at J1 until like 2-3 months ago, and then he just started some random J2 that's not even on his resume. How does that work?
Right. So those are the potential. So the thing to keep in mind is that it is a potential thing that could happen. It is not something that will happen. Okay. So a background check, an employer could look at that information. The background check could point it out. But background checks are not thorough in a sense. They're not looking, they're not looking to necessarily debunk every detail that you put in there. They are not necessarily going in super deep to debunk everything,
Hmm.
every claim that you make. So it could be that it just there's not a red flag for them to basically bring it up to the attention of the employer that's running it.
There's different levels of background
Exactly,
check, right?
exactly, exactly.
And do they have different names?
I don't know exactly. I can't recall off the top of my head, right? But it's basically sometimes it's a formality, right? So this is you have to think about this as a game. Like there are no certainties with this type of stuff because employers, especially employers in the U.S., are very, very entitled and very fickle. And but they're also kind of they also can be very cheap, and they can just they maybe there's a need for talent, and they don't want to like maybe drag the process or something. So you have to play the game, right? So you have to consider the risk reward here. So like suppose that you have J3, you're considering J3, you're in the process of it, and they run a background check and they see that you have J2 and J1. What are the chances of J3 you know ratting on you? Like calling your employers and telling like hey, he has multiple
Right, because
employees.
typically you're saying like, sorry to cut you off, but typically you're
Yeah,
saying worst
go ahead.
case
No, go ahead. I'm
scenario.
sorry.
Worst case scenario is they'll just rescind their
You don't get
offer.
J3.
Yeah, you just don't get
Exactly, exactly,
J3, but then they're not
exactly,
necessarily gonna take the next step and like alert HR at this next company.
exactly. Yeah, they're
Or
not.
maybe they do. Maybe you have anecdotes.
Eh, no, I haven't had that happen. Like if it's something like that happen were to happen, you would have to assume that there was some kind of accident. Like maybe they triggered it when doing their research. But that's the thing, right? Like it's so normal to be applying for another job when you're already employed, that all the processes of contacting the employer and what the way you approach them, if at all, it's very discreet. It's very discreet. It's not meant to basically expose you that you are looking for another job.
Right,
So
right.
so that's the point, right? Like, what's the worst thing that could happen? Like, the worst thing that could theoretically happen is that you lose all three jobs, but that's not very realistic. Like, that's like a 0.01% chance, right? The more realistic worst case scenario is that you simply don't get J3 and you keep J1 and J2. You try again, and maybe another company runs a shallower background check, and you get the job. And that so the main thing I want people to take away is that job stacking is very very risk. It's not risk free. What's the word I'm trying to look
It's
for?
fickle.
It's not fickle. It's not that either. It's like it's very non-committal. It's what I want to say. Like, job stacking is very non-committal because you are like the jobs that you already have, like, or your main job, your J1. You're not losing that because you're not quitting and you're not doing anything that is so abhorrent, right? The process of the background check, or of looking for other employers, that it will immediately get you, that immediately get you fired from your job, your main job, or the jobs that you already have. Usually, when you already have a job secured and you are just looking for other jobs, that process itself does not cost you your current job, right? Like, it could
No, it
cost
makes
you.
sense.
Right, and so that's it. So, like, people need to don't be afraid, because you are not going to lose anything. Like, you could lose the chance of you could lose the offer. You could lose the offer of J2, but you already have J1. Like, that's the thing. It's like, we are not quitting our jobs. We're not making radical life changing decisions. We are kind of like
Yeah,
slowly increasing the
I think
scope.
there's two different
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I think there's two different ways you could look at it. So I think one framework for doing it would be almost like a juggler, and you have three balls, and you have to juggle them all at the same equilibrium pace to maintain the juggle, more or less, right?
Right,
And then there's also another framework, which is like, imagine that juggler was standing on top of a medicine ball, right? And
right.
so the medicine ball represents J1, and so you just have to stay on the ball, right?
Exactly.
And then in the hands of the juggler, then he has two or three sort of side jobs or whatever, you know what I mean?
Jobs that you can afford to
That
lose,
he's
basically.
that you can
The
afford to lose and that you're juggling. So all he has to do is stand on the medicine ball, and then if he can juggle more and more balls, then that's fine. But that's like a second. It's almost like a distinct activity.
Yeah, of course, definitely. And I would advocate for people to go for the medicine ball approach. Like, you have to understand, because I understand this is a very radical thing, right? You need a mindset shift, right? Like, it's not just about, and I talk about it in the book and in the upcoming course. I talk about it, how it's job stacking is not just about getting a bunch of jobs. It has a certain mentality to it. It requires a certain skills, right, that are different from performing at the jobs that you have. So it's like one skill on top of that, and that's the only one extra that I would say that you need to learn, or the skills to do job stacking.
What is
But
yeah? So what is this extra skill set that you need? Is it being very organized?
no,
Is it yeah? Tell me.
being very cynical about work, basically, like knowing that it's all bullshit, basically, and that it's all about playing politics. I mean, not necessarily politics, but about presentation more than actual substance, right? So it's more about the way you present yourself, the way you handle communications, the way you excuse yourself, right? The way you get away with things, more than actually performing at the job, that more than performing at the actual job. So that's basically, I mean, that's basically rounding up the core of the new ability that you need to have. It's like,
Mm.
if you do it for long enough, like I have, like, I consider job stacking my main job right now, like, not the jobs that I have. So, like, keeping those my bosses happy, and being able to maybe get another job if I want, like that kind of stuff. That that is my main job. Job stacking is my main job right now, but I've done it for a very long time. So eventually, when you do it for long enough, you understand that, hey, managing communications, managing basically politics, right? Like presentation, like becoming, like you're kind of like becoming an executive, right? Like you're learning how to manage, how to handle politics and the bullshit of how to communicate and how to present stuff, how to excuse yourself. I'll say it again. But instead of climbing the ladder of running, like of just doing it in one place, you're doing it kind of like for your own business, which is the sustaining and the managing of all the jobs that you have. So it's like kind of like you become a company that has clients, and all you're learning, then the clients are just employers, right? And all you're learning is how to keep them happy, how to keep them off your back, and that's the skill. That's job stacking. That's the
Hmm.
skill of job stacking. Does it make sense? Hello.
Yeah, yeah, it 100% makes sense. I mean, that's why I wanted you on the podcast, because I think it's going to be a growing thing. And there's a similar term to job stacking called overemployment. And I think there's a
Right.
Reddit like
Yeah.
subreddit overemployed, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
And was wondering if you see overemployed differently, or when you're not using job stacking, which you own the domain jobstacking.com, so you want to keep
That's right.
saying that, but are
Yeah.
there other terms like that are similar terms that are have also some level of acceptance?
Oh, definitely. I would say that of the two, job stacking is the lesser known one. Overemployed is the more mainstream one. The one that like if somebody's writing, like that it's the more popular one. The one that kind of like has gotten more mainstream appeal. And I think it's because of the subreddit, right? Like you open up a subreddit and it has, I don't know, thousands of people in it. That gives you some level of visibility, right? That the term job stacking doesn't necessarily have. And I would say that I mean, both are trying to get at the same idea, or both are trying to express the same idea, but they're different. Like overemployed, I mean, like if you read the overemployed blog, like I think it's run by a guy named Isaac. Like he has good stuff there. You can use it. Like he has useful information in it. The subreddit, there are some valuable threads. I have participated in the subreddit. I opened an account and everything. Um, for Reddit, I opened an account. My only Reddit account was just to participate in the overemployed subreddit. So it's kind of like they're getting a different. I'm sorry, they're getting at the same idea of like having multiple jobs. I would just say the approaches or where we're coming from is different. I'm coming from a more, how do I put this? Like the biggest difference between the overemployed guy and me is that he will write tweets with hashtags on them, and I will never do that. Like that kind of stuff. Like I know it sounds silly, but that's kind of like the difference. Like he presents as very mainstream way, and I'm not and I'm more like just me. Like these are my thoughts. This is the way I see employment. I have no uh, delusions about any kind of prestige, of seeking prestige in the employment world. Uh, Whereas you see a lot of the overemployment guys, they're still very concerned, or the overemployed guys, they're still very concerned about the reputation with their employer, and being efficient, right? Like that's a big thing, right? Like eventually, like I'm advocating for, like, hey, do as little as possible. Like you'll be surprised how little you can get away with, and just basically just getting down basic principles, and especially understanding the nature of work, and modern work and employment, and not so much about like technical details about what's the best KVM switch to use to switch computers and that kind of stuff. But like I said, like they're both getting at the same basic idea of holding multiple jobs. It's just that the approach and the background where you're coming from, it's different, right? Like I'm coming from a background in like Nassim Taleb, like his disdain for employment. I don't know if you know him, Lindy Man, Paul Scalise, the 4HL, those type of concepts, that like Lindy, that kind of stuff. So I have a more, I don't know what the word is, like jaded view of employment, and so I really let that let that show in the way I talk and the way I write, whether it's tweets or it's the book. So I would say personality and the background, like the philosophical background context that we're coming from. It's the main difference. And I'd say as time has gone, as time has gone on, those differences are now becoming substantial, like substantial differences in the type of advice that we're giving, right?
So, Rolf, my next question for you is one that many people on Twitter were asking, which is what is the best type of remote job for job stacking? And what is the best type of industry?
Okay, so I'll start by saying that I think the questions are a bit misguided. In what sense? So part of the beauty or the power of job stacking is the idea that you can take your resume, you can take your already existing skills, you can take your experience right now, and simply take your resume and double your money. So the idea is that I'm not telling you go learn a code, go learn go get yourself this type of resume to get this type of job. I'm telling you, like, if so this is the big if, right? Like, if you have a white collar, right, white collar job, office job that can be done remotely, right? Not necessarily that you're doing it remotely right now because maybe your employer is not letting you, but if you can see that, hey, I'm working on a computer all day, what I'm doing is sending emails and moving files around, right? Like, I'm sharing a file with this person and I could do this at home, right? Right. So I have two clients that I've worked with that have been my two most successful cases, and neither of them were in tech. So one was in compliance, and the other was in design. Like, he was like a designer. Okay, like a UX designer. I don't know if you would consider that tech, but the dude did not code. He would just do design things. Like, he would design,
Sure.
user interfaces, that kind of stuff. So what you're saying, you bring up two very good points, right? Which is that, of course, we kind of like the other thing about job stacking is that we don't want to be rewarded for our performance, right? Like, we don't want our job to be performance based, because what we are trying to do is to have as low as a performance we can give, I'm sorry, without getting fired, so that we can just get as many jobs as we can. Oh, can you hear me now? I think I lost connection for a second.
Lost you for a sec.
Okay, okay. So what I was saying is that what we want to do is that we want to do as little as possible without getting fired, so that we can have as many jobs, so we can have as many paychecks as possible, doing as little as possible, right? So it's kind of like the employee dream, right? Like the what we want, right? Because what people want is, like, people don't want jobs. Like, what people want is money, right? So this is about, like, hey, forget about the work part, the job part. Just focus on the money part and do the bare minimum that you can without getting fired again. To keep your boss happy or not happy, to like keep him from firing you, and just get more money on top. So if your job is performance based, like sales, right? Like, you actually have to give some type of effort to get compensation. Job stack is not gonna work. If you have to be on calls, like if you're too visible, so you don't want to be too visible. If your role, if your job is too visible, meaning people depend on you and people need to get a hold of you constantly, then job stacking is probably not going to work. And what was there was a third point that I'm
Industries.
industries, right? So that's the thing, right? So it's like, what type of industries? Again, like, if you are not visible, right? Like, if your position is not visible, it has low visibility, okay, it's not performance based. It doesn't matter the industry where you are. It doesn't matter the job, the title that you have. What matters is those conditions. Okay,
I'll give you
divorcing
the
the
condition of industry a little bit though. So like for example, for software developers, certain companies are going to be way more demanding than others depending on the industry, right? Cuz
right,
if it's a software company, they expect more from software developers. But
and
if it's a
that's right.
non-software
That's right.
company, like it's a healthcare company or
That's
it's
right.
construction company or something, they just don't know about software. They don't know how to they don't really know the magic of what
It's
you
it's
do,
it's
and
not
so it's hard
a
for them to
it's not a life or
estimate
death
time.
situation. Yeah, it's not a life or death situation that you have to provide some software update or whatever. Like it's just about keeping the lights on basically. So yeah, so of course there's that point. But the thing is that so what I talk about in the book and what I talk about in the course is that you want to work for, broadly speaking, you want to work for companies that are high trust but low expectations. What does that mean? You want to work for a company that trusts its employees, meaning that there's very little or no micromanagement. Nobody is breathing down your neck. Nobody's installing tracking software on your computer, right, to monitor everything that you do. And low expectations, meaning that the company is not expecting you to be a very high performer, and it's not, again, not breathing down your neck, but now from the sense of like, hey, we really depend on you. We're really expecting high things from you. You want to be in a place that it's just mediocre, that it's just like, hey, we're just here running things. As long as the house does not catch on fire, we're good. And that's what you want. But the thing is that high trust, low expectations can depend even on your boss, right? So it's like talking broadly about like what industries, what type of jobs, what kind of thing. Like it could come down to your boss, dude. Like, okay, so for instance, my J1 right now, and I'm talking right now, my J1 is my main job, right? Because
Hmm.
of my boss. The company is super low trust, high expectations, except for my team. As soon, like, if my boss quits, like the same day he's quitting, I'm quitting. Okay, my boss makes my job high trust, low expectations, but just that's just the way he is. So again, I want to stress the point that you're not going to have everything figured out. Like you're not going to have a little necessarily plan or pre-plan before everything. You have to start, this is very empirical, you have to get your resume and apply at another job, get the offer, and then what you do is simply you don't quit your first job. You try it out, you try out the second job for a month or two, see how you feel, right? See if it's like, hey, I'm just cruising here. I'm not doing anything and I'm getting paid. Perfect. You hit the lottery. That's what you want to do. Maybe you find out, hey, no, this job sucks. I gotta quit because it's too much stress. All right, so what did you lose? Nothing. Maybe a little bit of time during the application process, but you're gonna get paid for the time you work at the second job anyway, the whatever few days you work there. So it's like, but you still have your main job, you still have your J1, you're still not worse off than you started. All right, so because you have to realize that that's what I did, right? Like that's what I did in the beginning. I simply started applying for and for another company, and all I did was not quit my job and see how it felt, or see what happened.
Right.
And
So
so
I
at the
guess
very
best case scenario, if I had to guess, is
yeah,
that you're working your normal job. I don't know. It takes maybe 5 hours a day to do your normal job. And then the second job comes along, and all you have to do is maybe answer like one phone call a day. And then any work that has
uh
to be
huh,
done, you can sort of maybe do it after hours, worst case scenario, if you can't fit it in the day, right? You just sort of work past 5 p.m. or something.
a little bit, yeah,
And it's not too big a deal. So at the end of the day, maybe you have one job, like your J1 is like hopefully maybe 4 or 5 hours a day, and then you can hopefully do like 2 3 hours a day on the J2, something like that, and just like
exactly.
see how
And
long you can maintain it, basically.
E- Exactly. And if it doesn't work, if it turns out, because again, I'll say it, like it could come down to your boss, right? Like maybe the company, maybe you interview and you feel awesome about the job, about the company, and then you actually sit down. And I'm sure many of the people listening have had this happen. You actually sit down at the job, and either your coworkers are idiots, or your boss sucks, or your boss he doesn't know how to
Right.
manage.
So
Uh,
you almost don't know the vibe until you get in there.
Exactly. So that's why when we were talking about before about the difference between job stacking and overemployed and all that, my main focus is that to get people to understand. And this is gonna sound rough, but it's the truth. Like your job is fake; it doesn't matter. Like your job's not real. What matters is the paycheck. So stop taking your job so seriously. Stop taking yourself so seriously. Okay, there's a bit of ego abandonment, and I know this is rough, but it's like your job is not. It's fake. Okay, unless like you're like a Navy SEAL or like a nuclear engineer protecting nuclear secrets, like, or maybe a doctor. Like I don't know, like the pandemic gave me a very low opinion of doctors and that kind of stuff. But let's give that, let's throw them a bone. right? Like if you're not saving lives.
No, I get it. We're basically all just middle management or whatever.
Exactly. It's just busy work. It's all, I've never actually read the book by Graeber, the bullshit jobs one. I haven't actually read it, but so I'm not necessarily saying bullshit in the context that he's saying, but I'm saying it's like your job doesn't matter. Like what matters is the paycheck. You can find meaning, you can find fulfillment, you can find pride outside of work. Just worry about the money. Just worry about the
Yeah.
paycheck.
No, it's
Okay.
fine. I don't even want to talk about fulfillment or whatever on this
Yeah.
podcast because people can figure that out for themselves.
Exactly. They can figure
We're
it
just
out.
gonna keep on the meat and potatoes of managing
Exactly.
the two jobs
Exactly.
here. And
Exactly.
so, okay, so I had a quick question. Um, would you ever take a J2, J3, J4 where you have to show up for even just 1 week, just as sort of onboarding, or maybe you have to show up like once a quarter and you have to fly into Washington, D.C. every 3 months,
Oh man.
something like that? Or is the rule like 100% remote?
Oh man. I don't know. Like, so if I had 4 jobs and only one of them required me to go out 1 week out of the year, like those are the conditions, right? So it's not four. It's not the
Once a
four of them
quarter,
asking
once
me
a quarter,
once
or
a quarter.
I've had situations where they say, come in for 2 weeks of training. We'll put you up in a hotel for 2 weeks and then you can run off and do your thing. You know what I
Right.
mean?
So
So there's a
yeah.
couple different ways it could go down, but yeah.
So me right now, with all the experience I have, I could probably like I could manage if it's a good deal, if it's if it's just gonna be those 2 weeks, that kind of stuff. I can manage. I don't know if somebody that's just starting that if they want to do that, but also here's the thing: like I'm in tech. Technically, I'm not coding anymore. I switched to QA. And by the way, I'll do talk about QA a little bit. If you're in tech, quality assurance is probably the best job for job stacking. Is the best position, and we can talk
I can
about
see
that
that. You're
later.
basically just running scripts. I've heard
Or not even running scripts. Like I'm just checking somebody's work, but it's like the
yeah.
developer had to do
Oh
it,
yeah,
and so
true, true,
he
true.
had to
But
test. So it's
I was
like
thinking also I've heard that like pen testing and like
penetration
cybersecurity
testing.
can yeah, and cybersecurity can be good as well.
Anything, anything that's hard to measure, anything that is hard to try, like anything that they can't just pull up a report to debunk what you just said. Anything that's like that, any job that's like that. It doesn't have to be tech. But anything that is like that is perfect for job stacking. What we want is for obscurity in what we do, in our estimates, and if it's truly like for instance QA, right? Like nobody's expecting quality assurance to find all the bugs, right? So if you just do a shallow testing of like seeing everything, like what we call smoke testing. Um, if you make sure everything's working right, and you kind of like and I've done this before, like I've asked the developer like, hey, can you check your work, like I already did it, but can you check it yourself to see if there's anything that jumps at you that maybe I should check that I didn't. And that way you cover your ass, right? Like because if anything explodes you can say like, hey, I tested it, the dude here, my colleague here, my friend here tested it and he said that it was okay. So it's like I don't know what happened, right? Like you can wash your hands. Like I don't like it's not my
Yeah.
fault. Like I did my thing. So anything that is like that is obscure, that it's like the metrics are fussy, that nobody can again like nobody can run a report and call you a liar, right? Like that's what we want. Those are the general guidelines. But again, it will depend. It will come down to even your boss. So it's like I can't tell you like yeah everybody go become quality assurance people right now because maybe people don't want to do that. Maybe they don't like it. So that's why I say
Yeah.
take your resume right now, take your skills, get on the job, and when you get the offer for the second job, don't quit the first one. Just try the second one for a month or two, see how it feels. If you don't like, maybe you like J2 better than J1, and people end up, and that's happened. You know, I don't keep right now. I don't have any of my original jobs from 2 to 3 years ago. Like they're
Oh,
all like
really?
my J. Yeah,
Wow, you're
like I
rolling
haven't
pretty
kept.
fast then.
Yeah, yeah. But maybe that is a privilege of tech. Like the amount of jobs that there are out there. That is the only advantage I think. That the only inherent advantage of tech is the amount of jobs available. But
So
there's
let
nothing.
me
There's
ask
nothing
you
in
another
tech. Yeah.
question
Yeah. Go
about
ahead.
rolling jobs. Um,
Hmm.
and sorry, I'll do a less bad job of interrupting, but I'm just so
That's
interested.
fine. I
But
rambled too much, so it's
um,
okay.
so my question is about rolling jobs. Would you ever just pick up a job that you knew you were gonna give like super low effort, basically
Yes.
until you got fired,
Yes.
and it would take like, I don't know, maybe 2 months for
That's my
them
J3.
to figure it
That
out.
that's
And but
that's
and you just, they are going to figure it out. At some point they're going to be like, yo, this is not enough effort for the amount of money we're paying you. But you're just like maintaining it as long as you can, another 2 weeks, because every 2 weeks is like 5 grand or whatever it is,
That's
so
right. Yeah, you getting it. That is the mentality of job stacking. Yes, I've done it. My current J3 is like that, and it has been like that for 7 months. So I've basically gotten 7 months free paychecks from them. I've done barely anything, and all I do is kind of like keep alive, like keep their hopes
keep
up
it
for
alive.
two. Yeah,
Yeah.
keep their hopes up for 2 more weeks, and yeah, so definitely go for that. It's again, like people need to be lose their investment in their job, right? Like if you treat them just like clients, if you treat your jobs like playthings, right? Like you're just my plaything. I'm playing with you to see how you are. Like I'm putting you to the test. I'm putting you, employer, to the test. Let's see how much you fit with what I'm doing right now. Okay, like job stacking gives the employee so much more power, right? Because once you remove the dependency, right?
This
Like
is
this,
true. That's powerful.
yeah,
The
it's very
idea that
powerful.
I think that's a lot of what we're doing with second passports and
It's the same
second
optionality.
residencies. It's the same rationality. Is that if you only have one job, if you only have one passport, one tax residency, you're giving all your power to that organization. But when you have multiple jobs, you kind of become in the driver's seat,
Uh huh.
and you're the you're the person making decisions. So it's very
You are
similar, right?
exactly. You are not a victim anymore. You're not a victim of circumstance. You're not trying to bend over backwards to fit at a job just because you need the paycheck. It's like no, you and I do talk about it. I think I've tweeted about it, but I talk about it in the course, which is that you have to shift your mindset from career, because people get freaked out about career, like, oh my god, like this place is not good for my career, or oh, I destroyed my career by not being successful here. Like no, think about the money you're making. Shift your thinking from career to compensation. Oh, you only lasted a month at super cool big corp, right? That it was supposed to be your career path to success. Like, oh, you only spent a month there. Okay, so like you got paid for a month. Like you got I don't know, like 10K.
Yeah,
You,
10
you,
grand.
you
Yeah.
got, yeah, 10 grand. Like, are you crying because you got 10 grand? Well, if it's your only job, I can see why it's a tragedy. But if you have one, two, three jobs, like why does it matter that you lasted a month?
What I see on Twitter, I'm not in this industry, but what I see is like they're just scraping away for these like 3K contracts,
Yeah,
and they're like, oh yeah, 5K contract. That's just 2 weeks of a half-ass job, right?
that's right. Absolutely.
And these guys are like scraping away. They're gonna have to do actual work and all this stuff. But imagine if these agency people were just applying to a lot of jobs. You know what I mean?
That's right. That's right. I don't like tournaments. I don't like participating in things where like you don't get anything unless you win or you are in the top three or you're a top performance. I was like, no, I just want money, dude. Like I want to live my own life. I just want money. What's the fastest, most reliable way? And reliable was the key. What was the most reliable way to get more money consistently, again, reliably? Oh, I was like, okay, just get another job, because it doesn't matter how low you perform, right? Like I don't have to, if I'm a low performer or a high performer, as long as I don't get fired, we both, you get paid the same. So I was like, okay, so that's it. Like just get more jobs, right? And a lot of people try it with freelancing, right? But it's like with freelancing, it's I don't understand it. Like it's so much suffering. Like clients drop you. Like I've tried freelancing. I have a friend that's a freelancer, and it's like you think like, oh, I'm so free because I have so many clients and I can set my own hours. And it's like I've never actually seen that from a freelancer. What I've seen them is always be super stressed about not having enough income because they didn't get enough tasks or enough clients that month, and I don't know, like that's just terrible. Like just get
Yeah.
if you had two jobs, three jobs, you would know how much you would be making at the end of the month.
No, I get it. So I have a question for you. I think you could probably categorize like employment contracts in three different ways, because I've thought about this, and let me know what
Hmm.
you think. Is like um, there's 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 sort of project based freelance work.
Hmm.
There's per hour contract work,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's full-time employment.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there's one or two others you could tell me, but um I'd say typically if you're not doing the freelance track, if you're going for a tech job or a remote job, it's the second two, right? So it's either a per hour contract and they say, how much do you need per hour to accept
Yeah.
55, 60, 65? Maybe there is or there isn't health insurance, depends. And then there's full time work, right? So is that a good overview of the landscape or?
I'd agree with your categorization. Yeah.
And so when it comes to the type of job stacking that you advocate, are you typically advocating for full-time
Full
employee,
time.
FTE, W2,
Yeah.
health insurance?
That's right.
Would you ever advocate like that contract-based work where it's 40 hours a week, but you're paid basically as like a per hour contractor?
Yeah, sure. As long as they don't actually try to enforce like the butt and seats for 40 hours, right? Like as long as they, because I mean, like if you think about it, the full time employment, they can also you can also call it hourly in the sense that they still give you an hourly rate, and sometimes even when even sometimes you have to recuperate hours, right? Like which I always thought was total nonsense, right? Like you're supposed to be paying me a fixed amount each month, and if I work harder, if I work more, I don't get to charge you more, but if I work less, you don't get to call me out on it. So I'd say I don't see any problem with being a contractor, not at all. The key part is to not to divorce performance from compensation. If you're just even if you're a contractor and you're getting paid 40 hours a week and you're actually working 8 hours a week, I'd say that's fantastic. That's okay. And if you're a full
Yeah.
time employee and you're getting paid 40 hours a week, but you're working 50, I'd say the contractor is better, right? Like so it's like as long as we divorce performance from compensation, right? Because we want to be why
Hmm.
do we want to divorce performance from compensation? Because we want to have as low as a performance as we can give without getting fired, but getting paid the same as if we had like
Yeah.
we work 8 hours but we get paid for 40. That's what we want. So contractor or full time doesn't matter. Contractor can make life easier because like you avoid the issue about the
The background check.
benefits, right? Yeah, the benefits. Like taxes are not so much of an issue because the government doesn't really care that you have multiple jobs, right? Like they only care about you telling them, you paying the right amount in the right time. So it's not about taxes, but it's about like the whole insurance thing and the benefits thing and the 401k. Like you can handle that. Like you can you can waive coverage for your other jobs. You can for instance, I can't advocate for people having separate 401ks because there are yearly total limits, right? Like you can only, even if you
Right.
have five 401ks, there's a total limit that you can put into all of them. So it's like people might go over them. Employers may ask questions, right?
So would
Uh,
you do your healthcare with more than one healthcare provider and
no,
almost have like double benefits just in case?
I
Or
wouldn't. It's
would
complicated.
you just only keep your benefits with either your J1 or perhaps a J2 or 3 that had like way better benefits? I don't know.
Right. So just like so in the book, I talk about job stacking principles, and one of the principles is that you will have to pick a main job. Like you cannot assume, you cannot think that all your jobs are the same or are equal. You have to explicitly assign one job priority status. So that could apply to benefits as well. And like, and it's usually going to go hand in hand, right? Like your main job is going to be the one with the best benefits.
Hmm.
So I would say it gets complicated because insurance companies do talk among themselves. They do like check. It's a more thorough audit process of like checking that you didn't double dip, and if you have multiple, like having multiple policies is not illegal, but when they're tied to employers, uh, insurance companies can get weirded out. Like they could go like, and they could contact employers. Like this is all could, right? I'm not saying they would or that they're going to, but it's something that could happen. So what I advocate is to have one main insurance, one main benefits provider, right? And then if you can convert the other benefits in cash, do that. If not, waive coverage. But what I've started doing for about a year now, no, I'm sorry, yeah, like about a year now, is that I've completely divorced my health insurance from my employer just so I don't have to think about it. Like I'm just completely independent. Like I just pay for my own insurance. It's more expensive, but I don't have to worry about like if I have to quit. I'm even freer because it's like I don't like you, I quit. Right? I don't have to think about my health insurance and what I'm gonna do. Like because I pay for my, I pay for my own. So it just gives you even more power to fire
Yeah,
your
that's
employer
interesting.
basically to quit. It's like I don't need you. I
Or,
don't need
or
your health
or if you're a
insurance.
digital nomad, like a lot of our
Exactly.
audience, you don't even need healthcare in the States, and
That's right.
you could get one of those nomad insurances, and that's all you need.
That's right. So contractor, again, contractor, full time, whatever you, it's better, works better for you, as long as you can divorce performance from compensation. That's
Yeah,
the key.
you know what another benefit of the the W-2
Uh huh.
full-time employee is over a contractor that I've found in my experience is that the W-2 employees, it's just a more long-term frame,
Yeah.
right? And it's a more we're investing in you frame. And
Yeah.
so they're willing to give you probably maybe a little bit more time to develop at the beginning, or they just assume you're going to stay forever basically,
Yeah.
to
They're
some
going to put you
extent,
in the
or
PIP. Yeah, they're
they're
going
going
to
to
warn you. They're going to warn you, like, hey, your performance is slipping. We don't like it. Like, maybe we can put you in a performance program, that kind of stuff. Like, whereas maybe with the contractor, it's more like, hey, you screwed up, you're fired.
yeah, right. So it's a little more long-term frame.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Okay. So we have tons more questions from Twitter. So let's try to get to some of that. So let's go back to the job listings and interviewing and stuff because we didn't talk about that too much. And
Hmm.
so one of the questions was, is there any information in the job listing that would give you insight as to whether this would be an appropriate job for job stacking? Can you look at a listing and say, this is the one, this is job stackable?
I would use the same strategies to figure out if the job is going to be a sweatshop or if it's going to be exploitative. Like if it has ridiculous requirements, if it has can work under pressure, like all those little red flags that you would use for avoiding employers in your even if you were in job stacking, those would work as well. But again, remember, you won't know, like you won't know by the listing if it's going to be jobs good for job
Right,
stacking.
because don't they all say like
R-
lots of responsibility, hard worker? But that's just what they write. You know what I
that's what
mean?
they
Or
write.
maybe
Yeah.
that's just what they say. Even if you get on the phone and they say that, you
Yeah.
just go, "Oh yeah,"
You
and then maybe the reality is different. Has
That's right.
that
You
been
have
your
to
experience?
be sitting down. But I do have two questions though. I do have two questions that you can ask in the interview, not in the listing, not looking at the listing, but when you're interviewing.
Okay, yeah,
The two
ready.
questions are if they use any tracking software, right? Like if they track employees, right? And what they, I mean, you don't have to ask them directly what they feel about it. They will let you know, right? Like people, employers that use it will tell you that yes, and they will try to justify that. They will tell you like, oh, but it doesn't get in the way. They'll try to uh, uh, bullshit you basically. They'll try like it doesn't get in the way. It's just a couple pictures every time. Just it's just for clients, right? And so that's a red flag. Like, no, like don't go there. Low trust, right? Low trust, probably high expectations. Don't go there. The second question, but if they're like, no, we don't even think like, no, that we don't like that. The people that we work with don't like it, and so we wouldn't even think about using it. That's a green flag. That's a good sign that hey, maybe it's a good place to work there. But
Okay.
maybe your boss is an asshole. But what is so you'll sit down. So you'll have to sit down at the job
So
to
first
figure out
question is tracking software. What's
tracking
the second
software,
question?
but you're looking at the way they react to the question, right? Because maybe they have tracking software but they're sorry about it. They go like, yes, we do, and we don't like it, but our clients ask. So that I wouldn't necessarily call that a red flag. They will have because you're looking for the attitude more than if they have the tool, because we can fool the tools, we can fool the tracking software, right? Like the tracking software. So the thing about tracking software is that it produces so much information that no employer can actually expend the resources, or spend the resources. I'm sorry, to go through the things to like if you have a software that takes a screenshot of your desktop every 10 minutes, that's like 400 pictures per day just for you. Yeah, so it's like multiply that by the amount of employees they have. No employer
Okay.
has
So
can go through
I
that.
get it. I get it. I mean, we could talk a long time about tracking
Yeah,
software, I think.
so
But so that's one question. What's the second
the
one?
the second one is, how long does it take for somebody to stop being new, to stop being a newbie? Okay,
Ah,
you
that's
want to,
subtle.
yeah, it's very subtle. You want them to either don't know, so it's like, because I know it's not it's a very unusual question, so they're usually not going to be prepared for it. But once you start, like, once they start thinking about it, you want it to be more than 1 month. So you want it to be ideally 3 months. Ideally, they give you the 3 month canned answer, but you don't want to go something like, oh, we expect our people to be producing in 1 week. We expect people to be hitting the ground running. Those are all red flags that it's a very high expectations job that are going to put a lot of pressure
Right.
on
Hit
you.
the ground running. That's a
Yeah,
big
hit the
one.
ground. You don't want to hit the ground running. You want to be new. You want to be new for as long as you can.
This is hilarious, bro. Oh man. Hit the
You
ground
want to
running.
you want to be new for as long as you can. You want to screw up. You want to forget about something, and you go like, I was like, oh, he's just new. He doesn't know. He didn't know about it. Like, you wanted to treat you like that. So that's the second question that you could ask to, to figure it out. Again, if they tell you anything that's close to hitting the ground running, probably not a good sign.
I think another one would be we're a small team, so everyone has a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, that's another. It's related to that, because they'll go like, no, you're expected to learn as much as you can, as fast as you can, because we're a small team, and we're expecting you to take ownership as fast as you can. So, we're looking for proactive people, and that kind of stuff. Like that, again, red flag. They're gonna
Right.
exploit you.
So I have another question about the interview process, which is um, sometimes you are interviewed by people that you'll never end up working with, right? You
Yeah,
get interviewed by interview department, HR, whatever,
yeah,
and then you get assigned out later or something. And then there's other jobs where either because it's a small company or the people are just more hands-on, you're really interviewing with the people that you're going to be working with, and you're talking to this guy and he's saying, "I'm literally hiring you because I am too busy and I need you to do some of my stuff." You know what I mean? Things like
yeah,
that. Or you're going to be on my team. With three other people, stuff like that. So
yeah.
what are some of the dynamics that you've seen that would indicate good or bad for job stacking from yeah, the dynamics I mentioned?
That's very interesting, because you could read it. It could go either way. It could be that he's such a workaholic, right? That he does the work of other people, and you're gonna go in, and you're gonna do very little, right? Because he's doing all your work for you, even if even when they're hiring you to do it, right? Because that's the type of personality that I've seen. And my boss in J1, like, he's the best boss I've ever had. Like, he does my job for me and congratulates me. Like, it's hilarious. It's so funny. Like, so you could have somebody that's like that, but you could also have, I mean, the other positive thing, to finish the positives, is that they're not, they don't have the work, the responsibilities, the expectations set correctly. So you could get away with a lot, because it's like they don't really know what your position should be doing, how much of the a guy that you're taking, that you're helping, should you, how much of his work should you take. So there's a lot of wiggle room where you could, again, not hit the ground running, where you could hide in the inefficiencies, where you could do very little, because this dude is a workaholic and he's doing basically everything, and all you have to do is, I don't know, go over something, and it's good. But it could also be that, there's too much, it's too high expectations. Again, they have too many things to do, or the dude is going to be over you. It's going to be not only high expectations, but it's going to be low trust, because the guy knows what you're supposed to do, knows how long it should take, at least him, he doesn't know how to manage, and he's gonna be on your case all the time about why isn't this done? This took me 1 hour. Why is it taking you 5 hours? It should take you 2 hours. So I've been in both situations, and I've been in both situations, and I mean, I don't have a
You
set
never
answer of
know.
like take. Yeah, you never know. Take it or don't take it. I would say if it's your J2, your first second job, go for it. See how it goes. If you are like me, I already have 3 jobs, right? Like if I'm looking for a fourth job, it's like I'm looking for very specific laid back cues. And since this is kind of a gamble, I wouldn't necessarily go for it. But maybe I would. But I wouldn't
Okay.
necessarily go for it, right?
Okay.
So
So I have a question related to sort of question one and tracking software, which is computers. And
yeah.
if you prefer jobs where you're working on your personal machine, I think that's less common, except in more informal situations,
hmm
or whether you're working on the company's machine, right? And
Yeah.
there's some sub questions there, but I'll let you kick that off. So personal versus company machine.
It makes no difference because what we want to have is one computer per job. So if the computer is personal, like obviously if it's personal, you have more control over it. So I guess personal wins out, but by a small margin. But it doesn't really matter because what we're looking for is to have one computer per job that we stack, and that way there's no conflicts, there's no issues. It's just like if they're all work computers, then fine, and that's it. Like one job per computer. I'm sorry, one computer per job. So it doesn't matter.
Okay. And hopefully this isn't too obvious of a question, but why do you need a different computer for every job?
You need a different computer for every job so that you are 100% certain that nothing from one job is spilling into another one, into another job. Okay. So, for instance, my J1, which I've mentioned, is outside of my team, is very low trust. They have a million tracking software tools that track everything, like not just taking screenshots. They know what apps we use for how long, that kind of stuff. I couldn't have that job if I was only had one computer. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't have it.
Right.
Um, you can never be sure, right? So maybe uh, you can never be sure. Like if you have a an impromptu call, like an unscheduled call, like somebody's calling you, you have to respond
Right.
right
And how
now,
you're logged in.
and how you're logged in. You don't want to send emails. You don't want to respond to emails from one account responding to another dude, right? Like you can maybe explain it away, right? Like you can excuse like, oh, I got confused, I'm sorry, but it's all unnecessary risks. So we want to have each job to be in its own separate world where they don't know and they have no way. Like there's like if you have separate computers, there's absolutely nothing that can happen short of you screwing up in a meeting, that kind of stuff. But there's nothing, there's no software, there's no email, there's no Slack message that can betray you. There's nothing that outside of your own control, outside of your own error that can betray you. So that's why we want one computer per job because we don't want the
Yeah.
jobs to
And
be
so would
anywhere
you also
except.
say one phone per job or what? And I think part of my other question would be like, so I guess you're logged into let's just say both companies
Uh-huh.
use Zoom or both companies use Microsoft Teams,
Yeah,
but you only have one phone. You can't be logged on to two profiles on your phone at the same time, right?
that's right.
So you would
Yeah.
need multiple phones or
Yeah, so if that happens, yeah, you would need one device just in case you have overlapping meetings because like if you have two Zoom meetings, like Zoom only and on your phone, as far as I know, maybe I'm wrong. Zoom only lets you have one meeting active, so you can't have two Zoom meeting actives in the phone app. So you would either, in that case, I mean, you would either be on your computer, right? Like, but I guess the question is
but
more
just for
when you're not
responding
your
to
stuff.
messages, because you can save a lot of butt in seat time if you're at the gym but you're on Microsoft Teams and you
Exactly.
respond between sets, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you're on one phone, you wouldn't really be able to respond to both jobs on that one phone with
Y-
Microsoft Teams, you know what I mean? You'd probably need
Absolutely.
two phones.
Absolutely, absolutely. You wouldn't with with Slack you can, and on my phone I only have one phone, and so because most of of my jobs. So only J3 uses Teams. So I can have teams dedicated to that one job, and the other two use Slack. So I only have one phone because it's like I can respond to messages in Slack, and you can have different Slack profiles. With MS Teams, it's a whole thing because you can only, as far as I know, you can only have one account active at a time. But I do have my client that is in compliance. He told me that he managed to have two Teams accounts. So that's something that I've been wanting to look into, but it's just like it's very low on my radar right now. But maybe I should, just to let the people know. So promise to the listeners, I'm going to figure out what the situation is with MS Teams. Right now, I can tell you with Slack, you can have multiple profiles. That's what I do. I only have one phone. So, there's no problem with Slack. But with MS Teams, I got to do the homework to see if what happens with the phone.
And do you ask that in the interview? You say, like, what are your communication tools? Like, are you guys on Teams? Are you guys on Slack? Are
They'll
you going to
let you
send
know
me
because usually
is it
usually
Windows or Mac? Like,
the
what type
meeting
of
is going to
computer are
be
you sending me?
no, the meeting is going to be in the thing that they use. So if they use Zoom, it's usually that they use Zoom. If they use Teams, they're usually going to send you a Teams link. So you'll
Right.
figure it out. I haven't had the like I haven't found it necessary to ask them. Also because it doesn't really matter. Again, like it's just for the phone, and if it's really necessary, dude, just get another phone. Like you're gonna be making a lot of money. Like just don't cheap out. Like
Right,
don't
right, right.
don't ruin the whole thing because you didn't want to get a second phone or whatever. Like you can just get a second phone if you have to, if you absolutely have to.
Yeah, and then a second line and stuff. It's
A
just
second
a
line,
good
yeah,
consideration. And
yeah.
then so you'll have multiple computers. I guess you'll have to be in the States or in your home country to receive the computer. So if you're living most of the year in Mexico, you don't want them to send you the computer in Mexico, obviously. So you send it to a US address. Maybe you pop into the States for a couple days, make sure that you can log in. Oh, is VPNs a concern as well? Like, do you ask them, do I need to log into a VPN? Are there countries where the VPN doesn't work?
Um, that's interesting because I haven't. Usually with VPNs, they're not necessarily looking at where you're connecting because the VPN will provide the jumping point from where you will have access. So that's not
Right,
really a concern. Like if they're gonna like the VPN. Remember how the VPN works. The VPN masks your IP where you're connecting from,
right,
and so that's what they want. So it's like it doesn't really matter where you're connecting from unless they have to whitelist it or whatever. But then again, there's what do you call it? There's dynamic IPs to consider. And so usually I haven't found the case where they have to explicitly whitelist my IP. That's what the VPN is for, to get, to have a layer of consistency atop
right.
all the noise of like dynamic IPs. Like maybe, like you're in some place, you have to go to some other place and then, not
So if they
necessarily to
have
Mexico.
you're saying if they have a VPN, that's good because you'll need
Exactly.
the VPN anyway to get access.
Exactly.
But I think there are some companies that might track your IP, but they don't require you to be on a VPN, right? They're checking from where people are signing in, and I've seen pages like this, and it's like either in, I don't know if it's in Microsoft Active Directory or other platforms, but it'll say like signing in from Cape Town, South Africa. You know what I mean? And they can see. And so you would
Get
you
your
in
own
though
VPN. Get your own VPN.
exactly, that's what I was coming to, is if there's I've heard it's difficult to stack VPNs. I've heard it's difficult
It
to
is.
stack like you can't VPN into the company VPN, but if there is no VPN, then you might have uh to use one, right?
Again, remember that nobody's trying to actively debunk everything you're doing. If they give you a VPN, they're not going to be checking where, like, they're giving you the VPN so they don't have to worry where you're connecting from. They're doing that to provide consistency on their end, right? If they are looking, if you're concerned about that because they didn't give you a VPN and you're concerned about it, get your own VPN and offer your own layer of consistency. Connect from where you are. Again,
Right.
we like, well, I mean, not again. It's the first time I'm saying it. Um, we're not on autopilot anymore. Like this is a very active process. That's why I said in the beginning or a few minutes ago, The job stacking itself, it's kind of your job, or it's the skill, is the thing that you have to do now to manage all your jobs. So we're not an autopilot where everything's provided for us and we don't have to think about anything. All we have to do is
Right,
finish our
right, right.
tasks. No, no,
We
no.
got to
This
be
is about
professionals about this. Yeah.
exactly,
We
exactly,
got to be
exactly.
professional over employers,
Yeah.
overemployed. Okay, and so you would do you actually outright say that in your book? Like, make sure if you're traveling around the world, you use a VPN so that you're logging in from sort of a consistent place. Is that part of the strategy?
No, no, because my assumption was I wrote the book for people that are not necessarily nomad. Okay, so I wasn't
Okay.
thinking of that specific case in mind.
Yeah, because nomads have the extra considerations like fetching the computer, as I mentioned,
Yeah. Well,
VPNs.
there are companies that will send you like you can have a PO box in the states, and
Yeah,
they will
forward
ship
it.
you the thing. Yeah, they will
Right,
forward it.
but then they say, "Oh, you already got it," and then you're like, "Oh, well, not quite because it's getting forwarded to me."
Got lost in the mail. Well, that's again the optionality of job stacking. If you don't depend on one job, like if it doesn't work out, like just see ya. You know, it's like, oh, you don't let me work from Nicaragua. It's like, just go, bye. I'll get a job that allows me to work from Nicaragua.
Yes.
That's, I
So
mean, that's a hack. That's a hack I wanted to mention, and I've been keeping that until this podcast. I haven't mentioned that in my book or in the course that it's about to come out in February. Um, there's a hack that nomads can do, which is, I mean, I don't know, like maybe you can correct me. Like I just thought about this. I mean, not right now, but I've been thinking about it for the last couple of weeks. Couldn't you just go and get like a contractor job for like a Nicaraguan company that has American clients? You know, your salary would be lower, but it's like you'd be an employee of the Nicaraguan company, and that way you skip the whole BS with the US. Like the company, you know what I mean? Like it's like you are purposely going for a middleman to alleviate the hassle of you having to figure out all that stuff. I don't know what if you've thought about it.
yeah, I actually had a similar question on my list of questions, which I'll ask you, which is, I think maybe a lot of people start thinking I basically am my own QA agency or my own
Right.
compliance agency or my own XYZ skill agency. And at some point, should I think about hiring subcontractors for some of my tasks? Maybe there's things, aspects of my job that I can outsource, which will allow me to scale more. Thoughts?
Absolutely. Definitely. Do it. Do it. Go for it. Yes. Yes.
Is that
Absolutely.
part of the book or the course? Kind of
Yes.
scaling up to
Yes.
subcontractors.
It's one of the strategies of job stacking, which I call like a consulting company of one, which is basically the main idea was like you get as much jobs as you can, more than you could reasonably handle on your own, and all you do is subcontract them out, and you get you get a cut of the pay, and all you have to do is manage the communications with your subcontractors and with your clients, quote unquote, right? Because they're thinking, they're hiring you as an employee. So yeah, that's definitely something that one can do. But more than that, just the less you have to do, the less menial tasks, right, that you can do away with, that you can pay somebody else to do it for you, the more you're freed up to do more productive things, which include maybe getting another job, right? Like getting multiple more jobs than the one you already had. So again, my client that's in compliance, that he's my biggest success case with job stacking. He actually hired an assistant. Like he has an assistant, and she does assistant things for him, but he's just a regular employee with three jobs, but she takes care of a lot of the hassle of little menial tasks, like maybe he will, like maybe he will do the research of a project and have all the information, but he doesn't want to do the spreadsheets, so his assistant will do the spreadsheets with information that he provides. So
Hmm.
definitely go for that. That is definitely an option.
So let's get to one of your favorite questions that you told me before we started,
Yeah.
which was, as a tech CEO, how do I know if one of my devs is job stacking?
Oh, okay. Yeah, you won't know if they're doing things right. Like you have to consider that it took the entire power. and data privileges of Equifax, and a several months operation to catch like 20 dudes that were having multiple jobs, that were job stacking. And then you read how they caught them, and they were doing things that are just absurd, that are so basic, that are basic mistakes that, if you read my book, if you take my course, if you read my Twitter, if you go to the overemployed Reddit subreddit, you're not going to be making. Okay. So you won't catch them. You won't catch them because it will, all you can catch as, okay, so this is the thing, as a CEO or whatever, all you will be able to catch is low performance. Okay. So it's about that. Like, if you're happy with an employee, right, if he doesn't have low performance, it shouldn't matter to you. It's not your problem if they have other jobs. If an employee is not performing to your liking, if there's a problem with that, then again, it doesn't matter if they have multiple jobs, because the issue is the performance that they're giving you. So you have to make the decision: do I fire them because of the low performance, or do I try to bring their performance up? So again, so I'll say, as a CEO, doesn't matter if they're job stacking, if they have multiple jobs, you won't catch them. The only thing that you can catch is low performance, which is the only thing that you should care about.
There are some easy tells, though, I think you alluded to, that people can do to cover their tracks, or that CEOs can look for. What are some of those easy giveaways?
I'm not going to tell the CEO. Like, he'll have to, like, he can do the homework himself and write a book on how to catch job stackers. I'm not gonna tell them
Okay,
our
okay, but then
weaknesses.
the and then okay, so I guess we've kind of talked a little bit about that throughout, but if you had to summarize, what are some of the ways that job stackers should some steps that job stackers should take to reduce the likelihood of getting caught?
Well, one of the main things I talk about is not creating patterns, right? So if you use the same excuses at the same intervals, right? Like, if every day at 10 a.m. you're unavailable with the same excuses, and you're always skipping our 10 a.m. meeting. I'm sorry. Um, that's a that's a pattern, right? Like, why is this guy always unavailable at 10 a.m.? Right? It's suspicious. So don't create patterns. Don't excuse yourself with the same excuse all the time. Don't excuse yourself for the same event all the time. Right? Sometimes, just go to the event. Just go to the meeting. Drop. Don't go to the other one. To blow the other job off. Don't don't create patterns. Basically, that's the key. If you are always fresh, right, let's put it like that. Like, if you're always fresh, if it seems reasonable, the things that you're skipping or the things that you're saying, again, you won't get caught. At worst, they will catch low performance. They will complain about low performance. They will complain about you not paying attention to meetings or something like that, but they won't have a clear picture of, like, this dude is always skipping meetings at 10 a.m. What's going on?
What if there was only the one daily stand up that you had to be there for a job, right? And so you were never available from 10 to 10:30, but you were legit available the whole rest of the day for the other job. Do you
I,
have any good
yeah,
excuses for why, or would you basically just try to get them to switch the meeting time, or
yeah, that could be good. Like, you could play it. You could play it straight and just tell them, like, guys, I have something. I have something personal every morning at 10:30, from 10 to 10:30. Could we skip the?
meditation,
Yeah, yeah.
whatever,
Taking
therapy?
taking the kid to something. I have, yeah, whatever, right? um, I advocate for not lying. I advocate for trying to use succinct and true excuses, which are going to be very undetailed, right? So try to construct it in a way that it's not a lie, so that you're not saying anything explicit, like that is not true, right? But I'm aware that so many people will not follow my advice. But yeah, it's like, you either play it straight and just explain that you have some kind of impediment for that time slot, or in that time slot every day.
Uh-huh.
um Or you don't create a pattern. You don't tell them anything, and you try to be in the try to be in the meeting as much as you can, and only skipping it incidentally. Not in a consistent pattern, basically.
Sure. So, what are some of your best excuses for skipping out on meetings? I guess. Oh, and I guess as a backup or uh, a first question is the reason you need to be creating excuses is because sometimes you're getting double booked, right? And how
That's right.
you're having calls at the same time. Is that the reason?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that the
You-
only reason? And I guess the first measure is prevention, right? So you probably want to. Do you have any strategies around avoiding getting double booked?
There's really, I mean, so there's a paradox of meetings, right? So the more attention you have to pay in a meeting, the more power you have over the scheduling, right? The less attention you have to pay in a meeting, or I'm sorry, the less power you have over the schedule of a meeting, or over when the meeting happens. Most likely is that the less attention you have to pay because it's not about you. So usually, the best defense against overlapping meetings is rescheduling them if I'm sorry, I skipped a big part of the meeting thing. So it's like you have to take into account the type of calls or meetings that there exist. So I classify them in three types. So active meetings, semi-active meetings, and passive meetings. So active meetings,
I love it. I love the getting scientific. Tell us.
the
Yeah, the three
the
categories:
branches. Yeah, the three
active,
categories. So
semi.
semi-active and passive.
Sweet.
So active meetings are meetings where you have to actively participate, right? Like where you have to either lead the meeting or you have to share the screen, right? Like if you have a one-on-one with your boss, right? Like there's no way, there's no way you can fake being in that meeting, right? Like there's no way to not pay attention, right? Or if like a colleague calls you to explain something and you have to share your screen, right? Like if you're sharing your screen, you're very actively involved in that meeting. Semi-active meetings are like the daily stand-up, right? Where you have to pay attention for a time, right? Like you give your update, and it's unusual that after giving your update or before giving your update, you will have to participate, right? So those are semi-active, right? Like you only need to be like you only need to catch your name, right? Like you don't have to be paying attention to everything that's being said. All you have to do is pay attention if they're talking about something related to you, whether your name or something you're working on. And passive meetings are meetings that are, all hands meetings where it's just a presentation of how much the company made and what a difference we made this year, blah blah blah. It's like, and nobody wants to go. It's a waste of time. Passive meetings for job stacking are the best because they're free money. You don't have to pay attention. Nothing happens. Like you're getting paid, right? Semi-active and active. The best way to handle them is first try to reschedule to avoid a conflict, especially in active meetings. And usually in active meetings, you have the power to reschedule. Okay. One on ones, you can tell your boss, you can tell your manager, this time does not work for me. Let's reschedule it for another time. Okay. Semi-active, but let's say that you can't, then the best defense is disconnecting, like having technical problems. Like put your device in airplane mode and connect 5 minutes later and tell them like, hey, I had connection issues. What did I miss? And then that's the surefire way to avoid any issues. Um, if you must, right? Like if you must, but usually you can just have the overlapping meetings happen and you can catch your name and talk in one, because it's very unusual that you will have to talk in more than one meeting at the same time. So it's like you can just play the game of catching your name, of listening when they're going to be talking about something related to you and they're calling on you to talk. And
Okay. Help the audience picture this. So, you have two sets of headphones and then you're using one headphone from each headphone, or
yeah,
how do you do it?
Yeah. So, what I do, like, so it depends on the number of meetings. So, if it's two meetings, I will usually connect in for one meeting on my phone and another one in my computer. I'm just sitting at my desk, and instead of using two computers, I'm using one phone, one computer, and I have earbuds for my phone, and I will just put. I have like a Logitech headphone set for my computers. So I will just put the Logitech headset on top, and so I will have one ear will have the ear pod, and the other ear will have the headset. And again, it's just about not paying attention to the meeting, paying attention to the cues that it's your turn to talk. So when they call my name, right? When they're calling me, Rolf, what's your update? What do you have to say about this? I double mute the other meeting, right? Like I mute the client,
Hmm.
and I mute whatever microphone I'm using, and I respond to the meeting that called me. If it happens at the same time, so this is why I'm talking about disconnecting. If it happens at the same time, I choose one of the meetings to disconnect from. I create, technical problems, airplane mode immediately. Boom, disconnected. All right, and talk regularly, normally, without any stress, no rushing in the one that I didn't disconnect, and then I unmute I mute myself in the meeting that I just talked after I'm done, reconnect to the other meeting, and tell them like, hey, sorry guys, I had a connection issue. I'm ready. If you want my update, I'm good to go. And that's it. That's how you handle it.
Right. Or you could even say, I mean, you must have a bag of excuses, which I would love to hear some because I think it's funny, but you could just be like, "Oh, my dog, I need to let him out. My grandma is yelling in the other room.
Oh,
Um,
definitely. It's like people are
I
yelling at my house. Like my wife is yelling at my kid. I'm
someone
sorry.
someone's ringing the doorbell. That's a good one.
Someone's ringing the doorbell. I had to take. Usually, I give as I don't give any details at all. I just go like, hey, sorry, I had to take care of something at home. Something came up. I had an emergency, but everything's fine now. Nobody questions you when you don't when you give us very few details. Everybody like and you give very few details and you make it personal. It's like I had a personal like something happened at home, but it's okay now, and you can even prep them, right? Like if you to avoid the pattern, right? Like that you're always suddenly disconnecting. You can prep them. You can like 10 minutes before the meeting, you can tell them like, hey, I think I'm having X emergency at home. I'm having X issue at home.
Smart.
I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to make it to the meeting in time. So whatever. Here's my update, or whatever. You
Right.
catch me after the meeting. So you can prep them to avoid creating a pattern of like, oh, Rolf is always disconnecting, or Rolf is always he never unmutes himself, right? But there's so many things that can happen with meetings, right? Like there's so many things. The microphone doesn't work. You can chat them up, tell them like, I'm hearing what you're saying. Can you hear me? And you're not actually talking. And they
Right.
go like, no, we don't hear you. It's
What
like,
if
oh,
they're both
sorry.
video?
Okay, so if they're both video, you're not usually talking at the same time in both meetings. So the issue precisely, that's the issue, that you're supposed to be talking and when one and not the other. Again, you just make it as if you had issues at home. Like you make it as if somebody is next to you telling you something. Like you can tell them like, hey, wait, and then you turn off the camera and talk in the other meeting. That kind of stuff. Okay. So that's basically how you play. Like you can just turn the camera off for a little bit and turn it back on. If anybody says anything, you just tell them like, "I'm sorry, I had something that I couldn't show on camera happen behind me. I had something. I had to take care of something really quickly, and I had to turn off the camera." Nothing, like as long as you're complying of having the camera on for most of the meeting, right? Nobody will tell you anything. Nobody will criticize you. Nobody will bring it to your attention, or you won't get in trouble. Is what I'm trying to say. If you turn your camera off briefly, right? And again, if you make it personal, if you tell them, sorry, I had something that couldn't be shown on camera, right? Like, I don't know, like I have a wife, right? Like my wife was trying to get to something behind me and she doesn't like to show up on camera. What are they going to tell you? Like, no, like tell your wife that she must not enter the room in her own house while you're in the, like, there's nothing they can tell you, right? And if they do, right, like if it's that type of employer, that is a red flag for you to just get another job. Like it's not working out, they're not accommodating, they're very, I don't know, they're assholes. Get another job, like substitute it, get another job on in your rotation. You don't want to be working for them.
Yeah, everything makes sense. I hope I'm not belaboring this, but I think it's hilarious. So you're potentially on video on two
Yeah,
different calls on two
yeah,
different computers, and they're both watching you
yeah.
listen to two different meetings at the same time, one
They
in
don't know.
one ear and one in the other.
No, they don't know because it doesn't show up on camera. There's not enough detail. The camera's not detailed enough to show the two headphones. It just shows like cables and it covers it covers the ears, right? Like it covers
So you're
the
using one, and again, so you're using like one big poofy over ear
uh-huh,
headphone, and
exactly.
then you're using like Apple AirPods or the earpods basically
That's right.
underneath it.
That's right. Same color so that they don't it
They
doesn't
don't
look
see two
weird.
wires, I
Yeah.
guess.
Uh-huh. That's right.
That's wild. That's honestly wild. And then what? You disable one of the ears on the poofy headset? Is that possible?
No, I just like if you have a pod right next to your ear, the poofy one, I don't have the poofy one exactly over my ear. I have it like in front,
Yeah,
so it's not actually sending sound to my ear. Like it's the
I
little
see.
ear
I
pod
see. You do
that
the
is.
DJ one ear thing.
Exactly, I do the DJ one. I do the DJ move. That's right.
Okay, and you just hope that you don't turn your head so that they see the AirPod behind it.
Nobody's paying attention, dude. Like nobody cares. Like even if they see it, what are they? Even if they see it, what are they gonna say? So I have another earphone in my thing. Like what are they gonna say? Oh, I'm sorry, I was on my phone before the meeting and I just I forgot to take the thing. Like what are they gonna say? Oh, we
Yeah.
know you have two jobs because like this is conclusive evidence. You have two jobs because you would like no, they don't know.
Okay. I think the excuses, I maybe that's a bad term, but sort of the reasons, the professional reasons for rescheduling and things like that,
Yeah.
are pretty fascinating. Um, oh, and I have a related question, which is, do you always prioritize the J1? Like basically 100% of the time. So let's just say there is a conflict. Are you always going to choose the J1? Like, let's just say two active meetings at the same time. Are you always going to choose the J1? And whatever happens with the J2 is whatever happens? Or do you sort of like mix it up and, I don't know, try to thread it more finely and do like, 70-30, something like that?
I'd say what you want to salvage is it's not that you always want to be available or on call for J1. It's about salvaging your reputation. So if skipping a meeting or if like having connection issues is not going to be a problem because I don't haven't used it often. I'm in good standing with my boss. Like let's say I just got some very good feedback yesterday. I could just say like I'm doing well with J1 is okay. Let's see, let's bring up the numbers on J2, like right, like let's make my boss happy in J2. So
Hmm.
it's about not being in danger. The priority, what the priority means, right? So if you're going to be in danger in J1 because you're skipping this meeting or because you're disconnecting because you've used that excuse too much and they're gonna like it's time to recenter and to give priority to J1 uh, as well, right?
Yeah,
If they're completely
I like the way
neutral,
you're stating this.
yeah. So if they're completely neutral, let's say like they're all equally unhappy or equally happy with you, then yeah, 100% of the time go with J1.
Right.
um,
If they're both danger, go with J1.
if
I
they're
like
both,
I like
yeah.
what you're saying about the basically managing your reputation at all times. You
Hmm.
you mentioned it earlier in the call, and you've kind of mentioned it a little bit at times. Like you're never seeming frantic, you're seeming very professional,
Yeah,
maybe a little bit aloof, I guess, but
that's right.
over but overall pretty professional and pretty like I have it under control. Could you talk a little bit about how you manage your reputation within organizations and your philosophies around that?
So it's all about the way you communicate things, right? How you communicate your failings or how you communicate your successes or how you communicate the tasks that you're working. So let me give you an example, right? So let's say that you were giving a list of tasks to do, okay? And because you were job stacking, you didn't really get to do all of them. You only, you had three things to do and you only got to do one. And now your boss is asking about how are the tasks doing. So you could say something like, the unprofessional would say something like, yeah, I mean, I've been swamped and, I just finished the first one and, I'm going to start the second one as soon as I can, but I don't like, that kind of stuff where you're like over your head. The professional way of communicating that situation would be like, I prioritize task one, so that one's done. Like, so it's like you took action, you took, you made a decision. It's like, I had this portfolio of things that I needed to do, and I decided that this one was the most important, and that's the one that I've been working on, and it's the one that it's close to finishing. And when that one that I decided is the highest priority, right? You're not talking like that, but you're conveying this. Like, I prioritize J1 because it seemed like it was the most important one, and you can explain. We're talking very generally, but you will have some context, so you can justify your reasoning why I'm sorry, not J1, the task number one was the most important, and you can tell it like, I make this decision. I'm on top of it. When I'll get to the other two that were not as high priority later. Okay, so it's not about being in the defense. It's not about you being like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, boss. Like, I'll get to it. It's about like, hey, took a look at all of them, and did a little work on all of them, and then I realized like, hey, this is the most important one. I'm gonna focus on this one. This one's ready, boss, or this one's gonna be ready in a couple hours. And once that's done, I'll jump to the other two. And then your boss can tell you something like, oh, we really wanted the task number two done first, and then you can go back to like, no, you didn't tell me this. I used my own judgment, and I thought task number one was the most important. Next one, please make sure to tell me which one is the highest priority, so we don't have this confusion anymore. And that's it. Like, that's the way you manage seeming professional and excusing yourself, your inefficiencies, or your lack of attention, like that. You never say, "Oh, I forgot about this meeting," or "I forgot about this." You are, I was trying to get into the meeting, but I had this issue at home. I'm sorry, I missed it. Can you tell me, any relevant information about it? But it's all about the way you present it, right? Like, you don't really care. You don't really. I mean, I don't care about those meetings. I don't really care what was said about them. But the person is gonna feel very good. He's gonna feel fine telling me. Like, he's gonna feel swell telling me all the things that were said in the meeting that I skipped. And I didn't skip it because I forgot, or because I was lazy, or because I fell asleep. It was because I had to take care of something urgently, and I was very aware of the meeting, but unfortunately couldn't make it. And that is the key. Like, the key is, stop being stop from stop it from things happening to you. Oh, like, I couldn't finish. So, like, I just didn't have enough time. Like, own it. Like, oh, just go on the offensive all the time. Never be on the defensive. This I gave it my best in this task. Is very complicated. Same as if you're confronted about low performance. Like, hey, the tasks that you're giving, that you're being given, are taking too long. You're not finishing them on time. You don't
Hmm.
go. You don't go, oh, I'm sorry, boss. I'll do better next time. You go, hey, I'm doing the best I can here. I'm not. I do the job that I'm assigned. I don't know anything about low performance. I don't know anything what you're talking about. I'm trying my best in the time that I'm giving, at a healthy pace for me. If that's not good enough, maybe we can talk about some more. Some more training, something else. Get the monkey off your back in a professional manner. It's like, now it's like, throw the ball at them. Now it's their problem. It's like, you didn't give me the tools to succeed. You didn't train me. You didn't tell me this was priority. I knew about the meeting, but I couldn't make it. Please tell me what the meeting was about. What was said in the meeting. Throw the ball back at them. Never keep the ball in your court. Never make it about you and your deficiencies. Make it about their deficiencies.
Interesting. And so, what's the best way of doing that? Do you think email is better to have things on a more official record, or do you think that the Slack or the one-on-one communication is enough? Like, let's just say something is pretty technically difficult, or it's just going to take a long time for whatever reason. Um, uh, Maybe that's a bad example, but do you try to like get that in a more official written format? Like, hey, I need
No,
to be trained on this in order to
no.
execute effectively.
No, you want everything to be. You don't want anything in writing. You don't want anything they can reference later, that this was agreed, this was said. Like, you want everything to be out in the ether, to be ethereal, to be, so that you can hide, and so that your boss can forget, and so, yeah, that you can bring it up later. You don't actually want to be fixing any of the situations, any of the inefficiencies. You just want to get paid. So if they tell you like you got to train in this, and then the dude forgets, and it comes later, he'll be like, "Oh man, it was my fault because you were supposed to train on this, and I didn't give you the training. So let's do it now." So it's like in that meantime, in the interim, you bought yourself like one more month of payment of doing very little. So you don't want anything in writing. You don't want anything that can be referenced. You don't want any type of acknowledgement or anything you said to be brought back to you. You want to always be able to edit what you said, edit what was said, and deny whatever plausible deniability. So no, don't send emails. Don't write on Slack. Try to have all these all these conversations in what's the word?
On the phone.
Yeah, on the phone. On the phone. You do want them to have things in writing. Like you want them to screw up in writing. Like you want your boss to be an asshole to you in writing, so you can take that to HR and get the asshole boss fired. But you don't want to have anything in writing yourself.
Let's talk a bit about that. So the asshole boss being fired, that is kind of a funny thing because what's going to happen? I have a couple of these like end game questions here. So let's get into talking a bit about end game when things start actually looking bad for you in terms of your reputation's going downhill a bit. You kind of get the vibe that you might start getting fired or on that path. Maybe you got a verbal warning, maybe you got a written warning, right? So let's talk about some of those things. um I guess my first question is, let's just say written warning. You get a written, like, I forget what it's called, like a PEP, like performance
PIP, yeah,
improvement.
performance improvement program, yeah.
Yeah, so let's just say you get a PIP. What is your next course of action?
Start looking for other jobs right now, and expect to get fired at any point in the future. Um, PIPs are usually, I mean, a formality for you getting fired. So as soon as there are any issue, as soon as you have any issues, start looking for a replacement for that job, if at all possible. If nothing has been made concrete, if there's no PIP, if there's no written warning, if it's just like your boss and I are not having a good time, there's no chemistry anymore, like you're annoyed with each other, go on the offensive. Go to HR and tell them, I don't feel comfortable anymore. I'm thinking about quitting, right? I'm thinking about, you can threaten them with this because, again, you have multiple jobs. So if it comes to it, you can just quit, right? It's like, like you can just end it. And there's the threat is real. So you can, when you bring that up, when you bring that kind of stuff to HR, if your boss hasn't formally complained about you, you won. Like that's it. Like you have won. Like you won't get fired. Your boss is the one that's gonna get in the in a performance review thing. You're probably gonna get changed to another team. You won. If he already complained, they're gonna let you know, and they're gonna try to fix the situation. And again, this buys you a couple of months of pay. Maybe you survive it and you
After
keep.
the PIP?
Yeah, maybe you survive it. Maybe I'm not saying it. Oh no, after the PIP you're talking about. No, I'm talking. This is before the PIP. I'm talking if
Right.
you bring it to
So
HR
after the PIP, would you say you're pretty
after.
much toast once there's been
Yeah,
a
as soon
written
as
warning?
they've mentioned the PIP, as soon as HR talks to you about like we're gonna put you in a performance improvement program, start sending applications, get another job as soon as possible to replace this one. And once you do, you quit. That's it. Don't let them
Have you
fire
ever
you.
turned around a PIP?
Have I? Yes, yes, I did. And my current, and my yes, I did. My current J1, I did it.
Okay.
I was able to get this boss. I got transferred from the horrible boss that I had, um, and they changed me to the team of my current boss, and it's been great. But like I told, like as soon as that guy quits, like I'm quitting, like I'm going with him.
Right,
Like
right.
it's like,
So let's talk about like things don't like before the PIP, things don't look so good.
mhm.
Maybe you were even on a call with your boss and he said something like, I don't know if things are going to work out here for you, or I was expecting more.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna need to see a big improvement in the next couple weeks. Things like that, right? Like, so if you start hearing stuff like that, what's the next step?
Go to HR, complain, tell them that you feel that you feel a lot of pressure from your boss, and that you don't feel supported, and that you don't feel like you're set up for success, and that you really don't appreciate this kind of pressure, and that you are I mean, that you just threaten to quit them. Just tell them like I'm thinking like, please change my team, please change, put me in another project, put me with another team, or I'm thinking about quitting because it's really quite uncomfortable and unbearable. And again, like if your boss hasn't complained to you about you to HR, right? Like if he hasn't built a case against you, if you're the first, if you go in the offensive with HR against your boss, almost you will almost always win, because bosses will cower at HR bringing a complaint about them. Okay,
This is
and
fascinating, by the way. Continue.
everything they say about you, if you're first, right? Again, if you went to HR first, everything they say about you will be try to spin in your favor, or not spin in your favor. Like it will be contextualized in the fact that under the context of you being uncomfortable and not feeling set up for success and feeling very pressured. So it's like, even though not even though, I'm sorry, you can always tell them that you have been having a low performance because the environment has been this way since a long time, and you're only now talking about it. Okay, and HR will most likely take your side, right? Like it's not like they're gonna fire your boss. It could happen, like it could in theory happen if some other stuff happens, but it's very unlikely. But they're gonna take your side in the sense of like they're gonna give you another chance. Like they're gonna go like, maybe this dude, this person really can't doesn't thrive under this other boss. Maybe if we put him under another boss, he will thrive, and he will have, we'll give him a second chance. So you will most likely come out on top. You will get rid of your boss, not because he got fired, but because you got transferred to another department, another boss, another team. And so never take it sitting down. Never take it quietly. As soon as you feel like your boss is complaining about you, you skip them and you go complain about HR. You don't try to fix it with your boss. You don't try to come up with an agreement. You don't try to be nice with your boss. You go to the people above him that he fears, because that's the thing. You have to understand that your boss fears HR. Your boss fears complaints. Your boss fears, like he has performance reviews as well, right? Like he
Hmm.
has, and so you go on the offensive. You never take it just sitting down as like, oh, I'll just wait to be fired.
Right. At the
Like if you
worst
can help
case,
it,
HR is like, "Man, why are you whipping this kid so hard? He's doing his best. You're
exactly,
overworked." It's like,
exactly.
I'm not whipping him. He's just lazy." But they don't really know. You know what I mean?
They don't
Uh,
really know exactly. They don't know, and so it's like, are they gonna believe the guy or you? And it's like they're gonna put the claims to the test. They're gonna go like, you guys will have to work for a couple more months, and they'll tell him like, you will stop pestering him, and you will try to have better communication with your boss. That's usually the typical thing. It's like you as the employee will have to try better communicating better with your boss, and your boss will stop being a dick. That's that's the arrangement. But
so it'll buy you some time. You're
it'll
saying.
buy you some time, but you're in a position of power over your boss. Like your boss won't be on your case anymore, because if he seems too eager to find faults with you, he will prove your claims right. So he will lay he will lay back, he will lay off the pressure. He will lay off the pressure, and you will survive. You will be okay for a few more months. It'll give you more time to find another job, to substitute this one, uh, and in very rare occasions you can fix a relationship. Like it's never gonna be good. Like your boss is never gonna be your buddy, but maybe you can come to an agreement or an understanding on performance, and like he won't
Right.
bother you, and you will give him a minimal thing that
Dude,
he
this is
requests.
genius. This end game stuff is like more genius than the job stacking almost, because this applies to anyone, not just
As applies to
stackers,
anyone,
right?
yeah.
This applies to anyone. It could be its own book. A
But
couple more.
yeah, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead.
But I had to learn it. But I learned it because I stopped caring about it. Like stopped being afraid. Right. Like the optionality of having multiple jobs is the
Exactly.
thing that,
That's
that
what's
gave me
so
the.
funny is that the job stackers, they have so much more insight into how these things work because they've been through it so many times.
That's right.
And so I definitely have a couple more questions about this. What if um what if there's only it's a small company and so there's nowhere to transfer you to? There's no other potential boss you could work for because there's only one compliance department, there's only one IT department. So it's almost like it's you or him. You know what I mean?
Well, in that case, most likely you lost. They're not going to choose you over a manager that that has he just has higher rank. Like you just have to accept the hierarchy.
Exactly.
You just lost. But I mean, I'm assuming you already know this before doing anything of what we talked about. So probably in that case, if there's no alternative for you, if they can't reassign you, if they can't put you under another boss, then keep quiet, get another job, and then quit. That's it. Like don't try to fight it because there's nothing you're gonna lose. Like if it's you or the boss or your boss is always gonna win.
Yeah, because they do typically have much higher rank, and
Yeah,
maybe they've been with the company for several years, and you've only been there for a couple months, right? You're just
Eh,
rolling a job,
that's
and
right.
then you're like complaining about this guy that they've known for years, and they're like, you know what I
And
mean? It's a bit
they're
tough, but
harder to replace. Replacing a manager is harder than replacing just some guy. Yeah,
right.
so you lost. If there's no option for you to be transferred, you lost, and just keep quiet and get another job as fast as you can.
So I guess that would maybe speak to it being a good strategy to go for bigger companies where you
Yes, definitely.
can get switch departments because you can sort of
Yeah,
get find another place in the cog machine.
that's right. And there are more inefficiencies because it's more bureaucratic.
Yeah.
You can hide in their inefficiencies. You can hide in their processes and the
So is
surveys
there
and that
a
kind of stuff.
sweet spot of company size?
Is there a sweet spot? Yeah, actually, about 300 to 500 is the best. Uh, Lower than 200. We could talk about let's say 100 to 500 is probably the best. Below 100, it's like it's like a small town. It's like what's the expression? Small town, big hell, that kind of stuff. Like everybody knows each other.
Right,
Everybody knows what
right.
you're doing. It's just like it's too intimate and it's too high pressure. And then
Pueblo chico, infierno grande.
yeah, exactly. I was thinking of that expression in Spanish. I don't know if there's an English translation for that,
Uh-huh.
but if it's too big, like you always want to you want to err on the side of bigger size, but if it's too big you might just be too disposable. It's like they might not like the slightest hiccup, they go like, oh, you're fired because we got 10,000 people here, so we can just replace you with a guy from India right now, and it doesn't
Right.
matter. So you want to work in like 200, 500 people, that it's all like it's big enough that everybody has their own space. Nobody knows what everybody else is doing. Um, and they're also kind of like appreciative of their employees. They're more they're willing to kind of like suck up to you a little bit more because you're special, right? You're not just
Mhm.
one number,
Mhm.
but it's not small enough that it's like everybody knows what you're doing or what you're not doing, and so many things depend on you because it's like nobody else can do with them, that kind of stuff. So yeah, so 100 to 500 is the sweet spot.
Okay. So let's just say you do get fired, you don't win your battle with HR. How can you extract as much value as possible while getting fired? Are you asking for more severance? Are you saying, add up my unused vacation days?
Right.
What are some of the things you're doing?
Yeah, unused vacation days, get them to fire you. Don't quit. Never quit. Doesn't matter. Like I don't understand why people quit. Like just get fired. Get them to fire you. Get them to go through the process, because to justify. So if they fire you without justification, they owe you a lot of money. So that's good. If they fire you with justification, the justification process takes a lot of time. They have to document a lot of stuff. They have to prove it basically, and it takes time and it takes effort. And so that's basically also like giving you money. And the key here is to, once you're basically in that fire state, understand that there's no turning back. You won't turn it around. You won't change their minds, and it's not worth it. It's not worth it to try to change their minds. Just
Hmm.
be as brazen as possible with doing almost nothing, and just get paid, and that's it. So you will either you will live stress free, focus on so that's the other thing, right? Like you have another job, or two other jobs, focus on those two jobs, like make them
Right, right,
happy,
right.
like
But let's just say
compensate.
you literally just got a job, or you're in the meeting where they're saying today is your last day, or and I guess maybe the end game slightly after, like in the days following that. What is the end game of the this is your last day phone call? And they, they're saying turn in your computer. Maybe you say, hey, can I keep the computer? How do you just extract like any last value, or if maybe that if that's the wrong frame, what is your frame on that last day?
I mean, if I'm already in the office, and I mean they call me and they're telling me you're fired, it's just that when you're remote, usually that's it. You just like you go like, oh, okay, that's it. Like don't try to fix it. Don't try to be like, no, but let me finish this. Let me I'll turn in my work. Like you're fired. Drop everything. Like go outside. Go outside, have a drink, what cope however you want. Like if you're already fired, I don't understand like how to extract value. I mean, like you could try stealing the computer. I don't know, like I wouldn't advocate that. Like I've returned every computer that I've been given.
Right. Where
uh,
well, you could negotiate a severance.
you could negotiate, yeah, you could negotiate a severance. I mean, but that's I mean, what else could you do? Like just negotiate the severance as much as you can. Get as much as you can, get them to pay you for your vacation days, whatever whatever you're owed. And I mean, I don't know, like you're fired, like it's pretty final. I'm not sure what else you could do to extract value from them.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
you
I
can
guess
extract value
negotiating a
before.
severance is probably a question people have because, you see really generous companies like Twitter where they'll give you 3 months of severance. Maybe something more typical is 2 weeks of severance, but then actually surprisingly common is zero severance at all.
Yeah.
Maybe there's custom packages for people that have more years with the company. So what are you seeing? What do you recommend around that?
I mean, other than threatening a law, threatening legal action, again, don't go quietly. If you feel like you're getting ripped off, threaten them with legal action. Threaten them with a lawyer. They usually up the thing that they were offering you, uh, uh, just to avoid any trouble. Because the employees will usually try to get away with giving you the least possible. So
Right.
if you kind of like threaten them, like, hey, because I mean, you're already fired. You can't threaten them, or you can't maneuver inside their own context, right? Like inside the bubble of the employer. But you can threaten them with bringing in something from the outside, like, hey, I'm gonna bring a legal team to go over my severance packages, and because I don't like it, I don't like it. I don't think it's fair. I think you're ripping me off. I'm gonna go with an attorney, and they're usually gonna go like, oh, okay, don't do that. Here's 50% more or 25% more, and then you take it.
Yeah.
Don't sign anything. Don't sign anything until you've threatened with legal action.
Would you typically do this, or only when maybe you think you have like a special edge or something?
Only if I feel I have a special edge. If they have given me something that looks pretty standard, that looks like it's like they're not trying to rip me off, it's just standard deal, then yeah, just take it and move on. Like that's why you have multiple jobs. It's like each particular job doesn't matter. Like you just take the money and move on.
Okay. Another sort of related question is at will states. And
Yeah,
I guess some states have different like employment laws around how you can fire someone. I think we all famously know that like in France or Greece, it's like impossible to fire someone.
yeah,
You know what I mean? In
yeah.
the
Mexico as
States,
well.
oh, really? And then
Yeah,
so in Texas and in many, I don't know, Republican states, like it's extremely easy to fire someone, right? It's
yeah.
at will. But then there's another type that's not at will. I forget what it's called. And then how do you think about the different, I guess, legislation around, how this works in different states?
Well, I think one of the main benefits of job stacking is precisely that it addresses this at will employment thing, which is just giving a free pass on employers to get rid of people without paying any consequences, without having to pay any type of consequence for it. So the beauty of it is like, like people ask, like, but if I get found out, won't I get fired? It's like, yeah, you can get fired for anything. So it's like you can get fired if they find you out that you're job stacking, but at will means that they can fire you for anything, whether you agree with it
Without
or not.
cause, right?
Yeah, without cause. Yeah, and so
Just because
it's
they
like,
feel like it.
just because they don't like you, their balance, the money, they'd rather have the money of not paying you than you. That's it. So it says like, so why does it matter? Like, just don't worry about getting fired, because you could get fired for anything. So I don't know. I mean, I don't like at will employment. Like the theory, the logic is that if it's easy to fire people, it's easy to hire them. But I don't think that plays out in reality. I think employees are incredibly conservative when hiring new people, and are incredibly liberal when firing. So I think it's just something that completely benefits employers, and it's just something that means that you shouldn't fear doing job stacking, because there's no job security. You could get fired for anything. So
Right.
what does it
And
matter?
like, does that factor into your decisions? Like, there are probably some states in the U.S. that have more like labor laws or employee protections. Do you try to target your hiring efforts to states like that? Like, I don't know which ones they are, but let's just say it's Ohio, right? Do you go, ooh, Ohio job? Like, I'm definitely taking this job interview. You know what I mean? Things like that.
I really don't. My understanding is that the entire country is basically some form of at will, so like some more extreme or less extreme form of it. So I don't really go hunting for special legislation jobs. Like, you wanna go for special legislation when you're starting a company, right? Like, so that's why everybody goes to Delaware and that kind of stuff. But when you're an employee, really, it's like, it's just tragic. Like, there's no protections for employee. Like, there's nothing worth it. So there's not like this big state that is for workers' right or anything. Like maybe California, but I'm not sure. I think California is at will as well. So like, it doesn't matter. Just get the job. Just get the paycheck. You can get fired at any point. It doesn't matter. It don't matter.
Speaking of legislation, obviously some of the least hardworking people are government employees. That's just a joke, by the way. If anyone, anyway, so that's just a joke. But would that be something you would potentially target, like a government job? Because
Oh,
maybe
definitely.
there,
Of
because you get a
course.
pension and
Yeah, get
benefits.
a yeah. If you can do it, get a government job. Definitely, I definitely advocate for it. I actually, the joke that you said, that you just told right now, like people in government don't work. It's like people in the private sector don't work either. Like, I call it the myth of the efficient private sector. Like, there's a lot of, and you will find this out when you start job stacking. Like, there's so many inefficiencies, bureaucratic processes in the private sector. It's like, there's really, what matters is scale. It doesn't matter if it's public. It doesn't matter if it's the government or if it's a private company. What matters is scale. The bigger something is, the more inefficient internally it will be. Right. So the only main difference between the bureaucracy, the inefficiencies of the private sector and the public sector, is that the public sector has no fear of kind of like passing the cost of the inefficiency to their customers, meaning the citizens. But
Hmm.
you only have to interact with government once in a while, right? Like, you only have to, get your passport, I don't know, once every 10 years, 5 years, that kind of stuff. You only have to do your taxes one time per year. With private companies, they make an effort to nod. The customer service is really good. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, they're not going to necessarily be inefficient in treating their customers, but internally, oh man, like, if you're an employee, it's just like, it's there's no difference. Like, and if you can,
Yeah.
go for the government. Like, yeah, try to get a government job. There's nothing wrong with that. Try doing it.
Yeah, yeah. I think, and we'll kind of start wrapping up, but I think one of my big takeaways, and there's certainly been a lot on this episode, like this has been unreal, but I think one of my big takeaways was how much you're thinking about managing your reputation,
Yeah.
and I guess coming across as professional, and perhaps you would say being perceived as an expert. Because
Hmm.
I think if you're an expert, you almost don't have to put in as much effort because
That's right.
they're more paying you for expertise than grunt work.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. 100% right. That is the main difference, and that is what you learn. That it's all about perception and what the experience you get, the more valuable experience you get. It's not the technical stuff. It's not being a more efficient coder, but it's about managing human relations, like the psychology. And I'm not talking about manipulation, manipulating people and that kind of stuff. I'm talking about the way people think, the way how to persuade people, how to get your point across, how to talk. It's kind of like cliche, but it's all those, they call it soft skills. Those
Yeah,
are the more valuable ones because they're cross cutting, right? They're
yeah,
not just like, if you learn how to program in JavaScript, you're only learning how to program in JavaScript. There might be some residual thing that you can take to some other language, to some other thing, but this is something that you can take in any sector, like soft skills, like learning how to talk, learning how to present professionally, learning how to manage expectations, learning how to manage communication, learning how to renegotiate deadlines, how to renegotiate scope, how to cover your ass, basically, how to cover your ass. Those are skills that you can take to any industry, any line of work, any position. They're the more valuable ones. So yes, that's what I've learned. It's like how to present, how to excuse myself, how to explain the thing that I'm doing professionally. And so I'll give you an example and an anecdote, right?
please.
So in one of this was my J1 a couple of years ago. So, but I left it. Um, I was assigned as the team lead. So I was the expert developer for a project. Okay, and so something I would do was tell the product manager, the product owner, I'm going to see if X thing can be done. Okay, and I would just take 1 week of doing nothing, and I would tell them this. I would tell her this on Monday, and then on next Monday I would tell her, like, you know what, it can't be done. Like, I tried to do it, it couldn't be done. So it was like a free week of doing nothing. But because I was an expert and I communicated, I explained it to her, like, hey, these are the pros, these are the cons, and if we try to do it, but in the end, the message was this can't be done. And so, like, I'm not going to show you any of my work of this past week because the thing that we were trying to do couldn't be done. And that's it. Like, if I was a junior programmer and I had been given that task, it would be unacceptable for me to say that it can't be done, right? Like, I would have, a junior programmer would have spent nights, trying to figure it out. And it would have been figured out. It could have been done, but it's like, it's not worth it. Like, if you were an expert, if you knew how to talk, if you knew how to negotiate, if you knew how to present yourself as somebody that knows what they're talking about, you could have just said, like, hey, no, this can't be done.
That's honestly a really good example. Um, at the risk of making the episode too long, I think this stuff is pure gold if you want to keep going. So, like, what are some other ways that you can manage people's expectations uh, in the way that you said? Wouldn't they sort of catch on if you're always like negotiating for longer deadlines or reduce scope or sort of like managing down expectations? You wouldn't want to build a pattern, right?
Exactly. Don't build a pattern, but always be very conservative. Like, it's okay to be known as the conservative guy, as the guy that's always like, as the prudent guy. You want to be known as the prudent guy, not as that's there's a difference, right? Like, between being negative, between saying like we're not gonna make it, like, oh, this is not gonna be possible, whatever, but being prudent. It's like, hey, like, maybe we want to split this up, maybe we want to reconsider the deadline, that kind of stuff. And I completely forgot the original question. But
It was basically like managing expectations and
yes.
some things that you do, basically like these finesse office politics things in order to just present yourself well.
Yeah. So the key is to not say yes the first time, not say yes to everything they say, not say yes to like, yes, we can do this, like, yes, it can be done, yes, team, right, like we can do this, team, right. Yes, like don't be eager to please your bosses, don't be eager to please everybody. Believe it or not, they do kind of appreciate honesty in that sense of like, if you tell them yes and then you don't deliver, that's worse than if you told them no, or you told them, you warned them like, hey, this is like, I don't feel so good about this, and if it fails, if it crashes, then you actually come out on top because you're the guy that was prudent enough to bring this up to everybody's attention. To you were the guy that was like, I'll do it, I'm committed to the team or whatever. I'll do the thing, but I don't feel so sure about this. I don't think we can. I'm not 100% sure if we can make it. And this sounds maybe too dramatic. This sounds like project based stuff, like a project fail. But even simple tasks, like in my J3, I had like the brief time, like I actually did work for like a month, and so my boss, he was basically pressuring me into having some test cases ready by the next day, and I just calmly told him like, hey, given the scope of the project and that I'm new, I'm still figuring out the business. I don't think this is going to be ready for tomorrow. Like, I'm not confident that this is going to be ready for tomorrow. And the guy was like, well, okay, so when? And I told him like Friday. It's, like like this was a Monday. Like he wanted them on Tuesday. I told like Friday. It's like, oh, okay, Friday end of day. So it's like Monday basically. It's like, oh, okay. And if I had said yes, sir, like I'll have them right away, sir. It's like, it's just like you're tying a noose. What's the yeah, you're tying your noose over your neck basically, like yourself. You are hanging yourself with your own
You're also
rope.
setting like a worker drone frame instead of an
Exactly.
expert frame.
Exactly. You gotta own you gotta sound like an expert, not like a drone. You gotta put you gotta put boundaries up. You gotta tell them like, no, this is not gonna be ready. I'm not confident that this would be ready by then. You always let them know that you're gonna give it your best. Like you don't tell them like, no, this is not gonna be ready because I wanted to go to the beach this week, so it's definitely not. You don't talk like that. You talk like, I'm not confident this is gonna be ready. I'll do my best. If it's ready before my projected deadline or whatever, I'll let you know. And so let me finish this. Any reasonable manager, any reasonable boss will be okay with those kind of negotiations. If you're always encountering, no, it must be done by this date. No, that's unacceptable. No, we need it now. Quit. It's a terrible place to work. Quit. It's high expectations, probably low trust. Red flag for you to get another job.
So do you find that you're constantly just being given tasks and then just sort of managing the expectations down of these tasks though?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So a couple of weeks ago, I got two people to do my work for me. I got assigned a few tasks, and I managed them with my boss, and I and I was able to negotiate, uh, to navigate doing the task in such a way that it was like I was able to throw it into other people. Like, I threw it to other people. Like, hey, now they're gonna. I taught, and this is the way I did it. I didn't say like, oh, I don't have time to do it. I can't do it. I don't know how to do it. I went and told my boss. I was talking to X and Y about these two tasks, and we agreed that it was better for them to take. For X to take the first task, and for Y to take the other task, and maybe I think I told my boss that like 3 days after it had happened. So I was like 3 days where I'm free. And so it's like 3 days where I'm doing nothing, where I had offloaded my work to some other people, right? And then I communicated the result to my boss, and my boss was like, "Oh, okay, good call. Like, yeah, they really know about that. Like, so if it's gonna be more efficient, that's better. That's it."
Yeah, definitely makes sense. And would you say that you try to like avoid being a team lead or being
Yes.
responsible for
Yeah.
specific initiatives? Or let's just say they try to assign you a project or an initiative and they say, "Hey, I want you to head this up." Do you try to say like how do you defend against that? Do you say, oh, like make me the co-lead with this other person or something, or what do you do?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Okay, okay. Yeah, we want to avoid visibility, right? So if if your job as a leader is to delegate, then I think that's okay. But if your job as a leader is to have, like, I don't know, like set up a project, set up the prototype of something, like you don't want to be blocking anybody. So if your position as a leader is going to be blocking others from doing their thing, right? Like, oh, we're waiting for Rolf to finish his MVP so that we can work off of that. You don't want that. You don't want to be in that position of pressure and you don't want that pressure. I'm sorry, and you don't want to be in that position of visibility. Um, you want to fly under the radar as much as possible, and so that like basically you don't want to block anybody, because if you block somebody you actually will have to do the work.
Yeah, yeah, the blocking makes sense. I think that's a good way of putting it. You alluded to that you want the ball to always be in the other person's court. So if you
Right,
have a team lead, if you have people that you're working for or other stakeholders, you try to make it so that there's always some task that they're working on, and it's almost like the frame is that you're waiting on them, not that they're waiting on you.
right. It's not always possible. Like, it's not, you can't do it 100% of the time, because that itself is a pattern, right? So you want to avoid the pattern of like, oh, you're always blocked by somebody. That's suspicious, right? You want to mix it in. You want it to be like 60% of your job, of your work, is to not be working, is to be blocked, or to be waiting for somebody, or to be waiting for something, or for the task to be so obscure that it's hard to measure, right? Like, it's hard to measure progress because it's obscure. It's either that, or it's so simple, it's so easy that you can do it in 1 hour and then say that it took you 8 hours. Those are the two um, sweet spots. Let's say, right?
Okay. So, what are some of the things you do to say that or to set up the situation that someone else is blocking you?
Um, I had to consult something with them. I need to talk about them about some. I had some questions, and I was gonna get together with them to go over my questions. And you play it by ear, basically. Like, if the meeting does happen and the person unblocks you, then you're gonna have to do the works, right? Like, you're unblocked. You're not always looking to be blocked, necessarily. Like, you're not looking to be or um, sequentially blocked. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, you want, if you have three tasks, you want one or two to be blocked so that you can maybe work on one, or maybe have one be blocked and you can obfuscate between doing one and two. And you want to play with that. Again, you don't want to create specific patterns all the time where you're
Right.
always blocked, or you're always I mean, this is not really a pattern that works against you in that sense, but you don't want to be working all the time, because then you're not going to be job stacking. Like, if one job takes you 8 hours, right? Actual 8 hours, because you're always busy. You don't want that. You want to have, you want to give like 1 hour a day to each job so that you have as much free time and as much money as you can.
What are some other time expanding things you can do, or ways to, I guess, expand time and, setting longer project dates, reducing the scope, saying
Okay.
that you're blocked, basically ways of just like delaying, sort of.
Okay. So the key here is to achieve what I call. I'm sorry. Give me a second. All right. So it's the key here is to achieve what I call plausible reportability, which is, if you are asked about the status of what you're doing, you have something to report. You always have something to report. Okay. So if you have multiple jobs, the idea is that you work on one job until you find something to report. And blockers are reportable things. Okay. And then you work on the, you switch, you pivot to your next job, you work there until you find something to report. So what you do is that you find something reportable and you save it. You have something to say when prompted. Okay. You don't be proactive. You don't go and say, boss, I find this issue. It's gonna explode the entire chain of command or whatever. Like you keep like I found this, and when they ask you like, hey, Rolf, how was your day yesterday? What did you do? You go like, hey, so I was working on this, and I found out about this. They don't know when you found it. Like you could have found it 5 minutes before the clock, you know, ran out. So you don't tell it like, yeah, I found this at 9 a.m. and then
Right.
I
So
did
you want
nothing.
like an epiphany or a project update or some sort of tangible value
Reportable
add.
thing. Reportable
Yeah.
thing, something reportable. They don't know when you found it. They just know that you did something yesterday and now you're talking about it today, and we're all gonna figure out what to do about this report, right? Like the report could be I finished the task, the report could be I found this issue with the task and now I'm gonna get together with X person, right? And then when you meet with that person, that is the reportable thing for the next day. Like oh, I met with this with X person. We talked about the issue, and now and then I went to look at it, and I'm still working on it. That's it. Like it's like you gain something else to report. So
And what did you call it? Plausible reportability or what?
plausible reportability, yeah,
Okay.
plausible reportability. Just having
Okay.
something to report. You never want to be like, yeah, I'm still working on it. I mean, unless it's a really long task, and you can
Right.
say
You want
something, but
you want to show some sort of progress
exactly,
basically.
you want to show some sort of progress. You want to show that you did something the day before.
And but have you ever been called out where it's like, yeah, so yesterday we found there was a bug and then today we're going to talk about the bug and then you get on tomorrow and it's like, yep, so yesterday we talked about the bug and here's our next steps. Here's what we're thinking of doing next. And it's like, bro, so what did you do after the meeting? Like, have you ever been called out? Like, what did you do after the meeting to like, have you started on these steps? Like,
Not when I was not since I started job stacking, but it did happen to me when I was just a regular employee, like when I was just like a mid-level programmer.
uh-huh.
That did happen, but not since job stacking. No, but it has happened to a couple clients that they just tell me like I have nothing to do, and I just say the same update every day, and now they called me out on it, and that's when I tell them like that's the moment when you feel like that's going to happen. That's a good indicator that you should go talk to HR, and you tell them like, hey, it's like I'm stuck in this. I'm not sure if I'm progressing in my career. Like they're not going to do anything, but it's going to be like you're going to show the right type of proactivity that it's not going to end up in necessarily more work for you, but it's gonna make the project itself, the task, look bad, not you. But yeah,
Okay.
you
So
gotta again.
if you ever get called out,
Uh-huh.
that's you think that that's a good time?
Yeah, that's a good time. You again. You always show. You never go on the defensive, and you always show professional,
Courtesy.
communication. Yeah, you
Yeah.
tell them like, hey, it's like this thing is very complex. Takes me a long time to do the thing. If and it's like it's the task is the task, and I'm working on it. You invite them like we can I can we can go in a meeting to show you what I mean and why it's, and you show them because basically you're blocked, so you show them why you're blocked, and maybe it's something really simple, right? Like maybe as long as it's not obvious, like you didn't even turn on the thing, like you didn't even run it once. As long as it's not that,
As long as it's like
you
kind of a legit blocker, then it's
right.
legit.
Yeah, then you're gonna be fine as long as you have plausible
Right.
reportability. You're not bullshitting basically. I mean you kind of are, but it's not true. Like you're just finding stuff, you're reporting stuff that it's true. It's just that it's like you found the bug, you found the blocker, and you just did nothing about it. Like that's it. Like you
How do you
didn't price.
spruce up what you say you did? How do you spruce up your reportability so that it actually sounds like it took 8 hours?
The you don't have by being concise. It's kind of like the more you talk, the more it sounds like you want to like that you're bullshitting. So just being concrete, like, hey, I worked on this, I have this thing, and if you get asked any questions, then you can elaborate. But you don't go out of your way to offer details and to explain anything.
I see. So you don't even explain the blocker in detail when
Yeah, I
given the
mean,
chance,
if
or
you have the information, you can explain the blocker, like the technical thing in detail. But I mean, if you have the information, but if not, you can tell something that is non-committal.
Like,
That's like, I found this.
let's
This is
set up a
blocking me.
call to
Let's set up a
discuss.
call. That's right. That's the intention. The intention is to bring somebody else to cover your ass. So like, hey, I looked it over. I looked it over with X person. So now it's two people saying the same thing, and that's it.
This is very
Pick it up
Office
again.
Space esque.
Yeah, it's very Office Space. That's right. Big inspiration.
Big inspiration. Okay, and my question was
George just can't. You know, my dad read my book. My dad read my book, and he
uh-huh,
said that it read like something George Costanza from Seinfeld would write. Like
I
that's what
believe
he
it.
told me after. Yeah.
So what are your thoughts about communication speed with replying to messages? So people are hitting you up on Slack or Teams or whatever. Are you trying to be like really fast responding to that? And do you have three computers out and you're
No.
responding really fast and you're saying, I'll get back to you, I'll get back to you, I'll look into that, will do.
At first,
Are you
yeah.
responding mad fast or are you responding like in an hour or two or what's the
Again, don't create patterns. Sometimes I do respond fast. If I see it, right? Like if I see it, and if it's just something that I gotta say, will do, or okay, something like that. Yes. If not, I'll just let them hanging for a. It also depends on the time of the day, right? Like if it's plausible that I'm out for lunch, right? Like if it's 12, 1, 2, even 3 p.m. I can leave them hanging, and if they tell me anything, I would just tell them like, I'm sorry, I was out having lunch. So I play with the time of day, and I also play with not creating the pattern. I'm not always eager to respond, but I also make sure to not always be responding late because then it could create a problem, right? So if you mix in eager responses with, let's say, lazy responses, and this is a very programmatic way of talking about things. I just realized, like, if you mix in eager responses with yeah, lazy responses, you should be fine. And what else was I gonna say? And like, don't let them ever know your schedule. Don't tell them. Don't be proactive. Don't tell them like, I'm going out right now. Let them, like, they have to ask you, hey, why is it taking so long for you to respond to this? It's like, I'm sorry, I was out having lunch. Oh, okay. Next time, please let me know. Oh, you go. You say okay, but you never let them know. Okay.
mhm.
So you always want to have, again, like, be able to obfuscate, be able to play with time, be able to play with excuses, be able to play with availability.
So I have a thought on this, which is if they know you're a family man, if they know you have a wife and a kids
Yeah,
and a dog, you actually just have a lot more
that's right.
you have a lot more leeway uh, and a lot more just ammo for excuses and
Absolutely.
a lot more plausible deniability. Oh, the baby, the this, the that. But if they know you're a single guy or girl, and it's like, what's going on? She's just like in her studio apartment in New York. Like, why is she not like like crushing this task right now? You know what I mean?
That's right.
So
Absolutely.
there's like let you have a lot less plausible deniability if they know you're single, but at the same time we don't want to lie either. So how would like have you thought about this dynamic and how you would um play with that dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, so for instance, let's say that my wife got sick, and but it was over the weekend, right? And like, now she's fine on Monday. I might say like, "Hey, my wife got sick. I'll be back." And let that. I don't tell them I'm going to go take care of my sick wife who is sick right now. I just tell them two things that are true. It's like, "Hey, my wife is not feeling well," and I say, let's say that she's still, like, she's okay, but she's still kind of sick on Monday, right? So that it makes sense what I'm saying. I'll tell her like, "Hey, my wife is sick. I'll be back in a few." Everybody is always constantly projecting like their own little telenovela of things that are happening in their own head. If you just give them like little details, you don't write the entire telenovela for them. You just give them little details like, sick wife, be back in a while. They'll connect the dots. He's taking care of his wife. He'll be back. Whatever. When in reality, I'm just like, I don't want to be in your meeting. I want to take a couple hours off to go to the gym, and I don't want to. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want you explicitly bothering me.
Right. And what
That
I'm
kind of
saying
stuff.
is it's pretty easy when you have a wife,
Yeah,
but if you're a single guy or girl, like you don't
I
have
don't.
as much ammo with those things. Like you
Absolutely,
can
I
say,
I
"Oh,
don't
I
know how.
take care." you say like, oh, I'm taking care of my like elder care, like I'm taking care of my grandma,
Yeah,
my grandpa, my, something like that, or like
yeah.
what would you work with?
I mean, I don't know because I haven't been single for 10 years, so I don't know what a single person does, or what the life of a single person is right now. Um, I will tell you, like, it's pretty easy. If it has to be something that comes off of your personality, right? Like, it's so like, if you in theory do elder care and you never talk about it and you're bringing it up the first time because you're skipping off work or because you want a couple, like, it sounds weird, right? Like, why didn't you talk about this before if it's such a big deal, right? Like, why aren't you telling us about how you, because maybe you're talking about all your other interests, about like how you watch the latest Netflix show or the latest Marvel movie or whatever. And so, like, you're constantly talking about that, but you're not telling us about the elder care that you were doing. So, like, what is this, right? So with a family, it's pretty easy because we're always talking about, like, hey, yeah, I took the kids to this thing, yeah, the wife, like, whatever, So I have no idea how a single person could cover their tracks, like, like maybe start doing something or start showing interest in something so that you can use it as an excuse. I don't know. Like, maybe something good will come out of it.
Right, right. I don't even know. Like I'm a semi-Olympic swimmer. I'm trying
Yeah.
out for the Olympics,
Uh,
and
uh,
sometimes we have trainings on Tuesdays for the Olympics.
Yeah,
And it's like, all right, that's
I'm trying to be a pro Super Smash player, so it's like I got, like, I don't know. It's like I got a tournament this weekend. I don't know.
Rolf. I feel like we could go for hours with this. It's honestly a super fascinating topic, and we're all very thankful for your time. At this point of the episode, this is you know what to do. You can promote your book again, Job Stacking. Everybody go get it. I believe you have a course coming out soon as well, right?
That's right. So people can get the book now, Job Stacking, on Amazon. Just, Job Stacking, 2 words, Job Stacking, and like, if the algorithm doesn't like you, you can include my name, Rolf Haltza. Uh, but I'm coming up with a course, or coming out. I'm sorry, I should say coming out. The course is coming out on February 22nd. 2023, and the course will cover everything that's in the book plus more. It's kind of like if I did a second edition of the book, but I did it as an online course. And just be on the lookout for that. It'll have a lot more information, and one of the packages actually comes with 6 months of a monthly Q&A session with me. So you'll have me for 6 months to answer your questions, and so we can go as detailed in your particular case as is needed. I mean, I should explain. It's not individual sessions. Sessions. There's going to be group QA sessions, but we can go over your individual case when your question comes up. So, and you get that for 6 months. And if not, the regular package will have the course content information. We'll go over the basics of job stacking. We'll go over background checks, the legality of job stacking. Which is, spoiler, it's legal in the U.S. But I'm going to provide you with a document that has a couple questions to ask your attorney, just to have your conscience at ease. We talk about what we talked about in this podcast. We're going to talk about employers, how to figure out if your employer is good for job stacking or during the interview, what to do with tracking, how to handle meetings, everything, and even theoretical, like not only like empirical stuff, but theoretical stuff about job stacking too, and the nature of modern employment as well. So catch the course. You can buy it starting February 22nd next year. If you can't wait, get the book now. But the course is going to be a lot more comprehensive.
Awesome. And shout out your Twitter and any other platforms that you have.
Yeah, so I only have the one Twitter account, and it's my basically my personal Twitter account, which is at Rolf Haltza. Basically, at my first name and last. I'm sorry, my last name and middle name, Rolf Haltza.
Awesome. And people can go to jobstacking.com as well, right?
That's right. The course is gonna. So right now it only has the book. So you can get the book from the jobstacking.com website. But coming February, you're gonna be able to get the course.
Awesome, man. Well, Rolf, thank you so much for this conversation today. I think everyone definitely had their entire frame shooken, and they have a new perspective on life. So this has been another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Thanks so much for joining us.
No, thank you for inviting me.